We got put on timeout from YouTube. The episode was removed, and it says content that promotes, glorifies, or incites acts of violence through harmful conspiracy theories isn't allowed on YouTube.
These are the perspectives they really don't want becoming viral on the internet, because these are the ones that really remove power structures the fastest. So here's the thing, there's absolute certainty that probably not a small percentage of these celebrities we see that we know are rocking with the Illuminati and stuff, it's not really of their choice. They're captive against their own free will a lot of the time. They went to a party at one point early in their career, and they were put in a compromising position before they knew it. They were filmed, and they're a slave for life. This is what it means to sell your soul to the devil.
This is the first time I've seen a president in my life so openly and lovingly speak about God and the spiritual warfare that's currently going on this earth. My experience throughout my life of presidents is that they're never authentic. They're always wearing a mask, and they're always scripted and just saying what they think they need to. Like, imagine if our president openly was saying that there's child sacrifices and satanic rituals going on.
So this stuff is coming out and they can't keep the lid on it, right? More people becoming aware has spiritual implications on the karma of these things coming to light. We can't even imagine the implications of this 10 years from now, the way this is going to shift the collective consciousness.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to the Great Awakening Show with myself and my main man, Aaron Abke. How you doing, brother?
Great to be back with you as always, man.
We're especially excited for today's episode, and we have a little bit of interesting news, a little bit of an update to share with you guys who are, loyal supporters of the show. We appreciate you guys, and we wanted to let you in on a little bit of ripples that we're making in the matrix, if you will. But before we get into that in a minute, as always, just wanted to address, for those of you who are new or maybe who are just now tuning in, our mission with this show is to document the story of humanity's awakening, which can be thought of as the story of humanity's evolution of its own consciousness in real time. There are an endless amount of news shows and news outlets, independent journalists, whatever it may be out there. Our intention is not to focus heavily on news and try to compete on that front. Our objective is to keep you guys in the know, but to do so from a spiritually balanced place, always bringing it back to whatever's going on out there and how that could be perceived internally, and what is actually going on when we zoom out and look at things from a deeper spiritual perspective. So we're going to be going into all sorts of very interesting things right now that are going on our planet. But as we do, always remember, don't get lost in the sauce. All of this is positive when looked at from a certain perspective. So with that, we wanted to start off by sharing some interesting things that happened since our last episode. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that everyone can see this.
What do we have here?
Let's go ahead and make this bigger. So we got put on timeout from YouTube, and this is from our very first episode, guys. The episode was removed, and community guidelines is the reason they gave for why it was removed. And then it says content that promotes, glorifies, or incites acts of violence through harmful conspiracy theories, which have been linked to direct threats or violent acts, isn't allowed on YouTube. And they even gave us a timestamp. Okay. So that's piece one.
Let's see what these violent promoting antics they're talking about are.
Okay. Then we're going to show you right here just so everyone can see. So this is our first episode. If you guys remember that, it was actually before 2024 started, and we let everyone know what was going to be, what the new show was going to be about, our intentions for it, and how exciting 2024 was going to be as a year. And they literally deleted it off the platform.
I don't know about you, dude, but I don't remember promoting violence on this show, but it can happen by accident pretty easily, right? So yeah, let's take them at their word. Let's find out.
Maybe we got carried away. So we actually found that little section right before the timestamp that they listed. So we'll let you guys be the judge. So our intention with this show moving forward is really just to be that reminder for you guys to not only bring the real world events and the things that are going on in our culture that very much so do impact us in the 3D, but to also ground that in the reality that this is not all that we are, and that there are higher perspectives that are simultaneously going on. So I'm going to hand it off. So basically, they banned us for talking about how there's higher perspectives and how we have a spiritual mission with the show.
What's interesting, bro, is that like they didn't even give us a warning or like a strike. They deleted the episode as if like there's extremely harmful content in there. And I don't know about you, dude, but I come across like I'll see videos and stuff on YouTube all the time that are like actually violence, right? Like actual violence in the streets, or you know, a lot of radical leftism protesting, punch a Nazi, stuff like that. And it's all day long, YouTube will allow that. But then you get two guys talking about the expansion of human consciousness, positive news, positive takes on world events, and it's, you know, deleted for promoting violence. To me, that just says like, obviously, we haven't said or done anything that is in direct violation of any of YouTube's guidelines, but those guidelines are like super open-ended and arbitrary and subjective on purpose, so they can say like, well, we say that you did, and that's enough. And doesn't that say a lot about the effect that the powers that be probably feel about this kind of content? The really higher consciousness viewpoints are the ones that, you know, we've theorized this on the show a lot. These are the perspectives they really don't want becoming viral on the internet, because these are the ones that really remove power structures the fastest through non-participation and non-compliance. It's like we're literally advocating for not protesting, not participating, not doing anything in terms of relating to the system. And according to them, that's violence, right? And in a sense, that would be violence to them because we're throwing down their system through non-participation. But, you know, I kind of digress. I think my overall take on this was, what a net positive, what a positive sign that our content is having a real impact, in the sense that it's clearly threatening somebody at YouTube who can't come up with an actual violation. So they're like, it's, you know, this timestamp, you promoted violence, we deleted your episode.
Yeah, you had, when I sent this to you, that was exactly your perspective. And I was like, that's a great point. We're obviously making a real impact with this show, and it's bothering people.
If the YouTube overlords don't want people seeing this content, then the best thing you can do is share the content to get it in front of more people. But we're definitely going to open up a Rumble channel and upload all our videos and episodes there. So even though it's deleted on YouTube, you can't watch it there right now. We will have it available on Rumble, and we definitely will be contesting this episode deletion and putting in our 2 cents to YouTube and see how they respond. And that might be an interesting follow-up next month to see what YouTube's response is, if they either reinstate the video or if they double down that we're promoting violence by talking about peace on earth and unity consciousness. That'll be even more telling, I think. But for now, you know, again, take it as a good sign that somebody doesn't want this content to be seen. And that's a good sign for the impact it's having, because, dude, I've done a number of events this year, a lot of live events this year, and I've been getting a ton of feedback from all of you guys who come to these events of mine and just talk about what an impact our show is having on not only yourself, but your friends, your families. I have a lot of people that say, I watch it with my whole family every month when you guys post. We love seeing your positive takes on world events. And that's just so encouraging to hear, like, so much feedback from people that the effects are rippling through the collective. And that's the whole purpose of why we started this show. So again, it's a net positive for sure, even though on the surface it may look like a negative.
Beautifully said.
So with that being said, let's jump into our first segment for today's show, which is positive news. And I'll kick it over to you, Jeremy.
Awesome, my man. All right. Let's go ahead and pull up clip 1.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Dude, how many cuts were in that 13-second video?
So this isn't actually my piece of positive news, but I wanted to start us off with a good laugh. Let's watch it one more time.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
5 cuts in 13 seconds. Holy Toledo, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, he's crushing the short form content, huh? So I thought that was funny. Just full confirmation that we live in a simulation. Like everything about that. The backdrop, the amount of amphetamines they injected him with to get those 13 seconons.
Did you see Trump said he demands Biden have a drug test before their debate?
And then the fact that he said he won both debates, like, I don't recall it going like that. But
yeah, I remember a sloppy food fight that was unwatchable on both sides.
Yeah.
When Trump said, I demand Biden take a drug test, the media immediately came out and was like, Trump accuses Biden of doing meth and heroin. You know, like they just have to spin it in some way. But I would actually love to see, I'm just curious, like personally, I would love to see a drug test on both ends. I think Trump said he would do a drug test too, but just to see like, what are they putting in this guy to keep him up there? Cause obviously poor dude is like what, 83 and like, can barely keep a coherent thought in his mind for a few seconds. Like he should not be running the largest country on earth, should not be in this position at all. What kind of drugs are they putting in this poor old man to keep him up there?
That good shit. That the type of shit that's banned from the Olympics. We'll put it that way.
But you can get it from a doctor.
Yeah. Okay. So my actual positive news clip is coming from Tucker Carlson's interview of Nayib Bukele, which is the president of El Salvador. And did you watch this?
I didn't, no.
All right, dope. So you know who I'm talking about though, right? This dude?
Yeah, this dude's a gangster.
Okay, cool. So to set the tone here, because I'm going to pull out a few timestamps because the interview's a little over an hour. So fascinating interview. This is the first time I've seen a president in my life so openly and lovingly speak about God and the spiritual warfare that's currently going on this earth. I mean, my experience, I'm about to turn 32. My experience throughout my life of presidents, not just ours, is that they're never authentic. They never speak what they actually feel. They're always wearing a mask and they're always scripted and just saying what they think they need to. And whenever I've seen, I don't know if it's Nayib or Nayeb, but the president of El Salvador, whenever I've seen him speak, I'm very impressed with how authentic he is. He's like a normal human being. And of course, sure, you could say it's all an act. They're all in the same club, maybe. But we're going to show a few clips. One of them is just about very fascinating because of how he speaks about God in prayer. And then the other one, he starts talking about MS-13, which... Have you heard about what he's done since he's become president?
A little bit, yeah.
How like with their prison system, and they've like they've managed to turn the most violent country in the world into the safest. It's safer than Canada, safer than the United States by many-fold now. And so he's interviewing him a little bit on like, how'd you do that? Like what? And so he talks about MS-13 and how they do satanic rituals and how this is a spiritual warfare and how they won because, like just out in the open, that's my clip. So number one, name another president. Like imagine if our president openly was saying that there's child sacrifices and satanic rituals going on, that this is a spiritual warfare and that, God will win. So I'm going to play this quick part. Let's see.
So just bottom line it for us. What's the formula?
Well, I can tell you the official formula and the real formula.
All right. So that's the question. And then we're going to go to, because he gives a long answer, we're going to go to right here.
They have 6 million possible targets. So it was almost an impossible task.
It's a guerrilla war, really.
Yes, it is, but it was an impossible task because you have to go after them. They were intertwined with the population. They were everywhere. And they were killing randomly. So how do you stop that? So we really tried to figure out what to do. And And I basically said, well, I mean, it's we're looking into an impossible mission here. So we pray. And we.
You prayed in the meeting?
Yes, of course, several times. Yeah.
What did you pray for?
To wisdom, to win the war, to have. I thought at the time that we would have civilian casualties, so we prayed that the civilian casualties would be as low as possible, and we didn't have any civilian casualties.
And was everyone in the meeting comfortable with that?
Yes. All my security cabinet are believers. They all believe in God. We're a secular country, of course, but.
Can you imagine that? So now we're gonna play the MS-13 part, which is the other section.
We all believe in God, so yeah.
MS-13 is one of the major gangs.
And they are satanic also.
That was my question. So
Yes.
very
I'm
little.
sorry.
No. But I would hope you will explain it, because very little has been written in the West about this.
They're satanic, yes.
But actually, literally, can you explain?
Well, they didn't start as a satanic organization. They MS-13 started in Los Angeles, in the U.S., because Salvadorans weren't allowed to sell drugs by the Mexican gangs. So they created a gang that was called the 18th Street Gang, because they basically wanted to sell drugs in a street that was 18th Street over there. But then division started they started dividing themselves and started infighting. So they created the MS-13. And then MS-13 started outgrowing the other gangs, and they started exporting the organization to other parts of the U.S. And when Bill Clinton decided to deport those guys, he didn't tell our government at the time, I'm deporting this criminal. They just send them here. And they came, there were few, but unchecked. At the same time, some laws were passed to protect minors from imprisonment. And of course, the gangs used that to recruit 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. So at the beginning it was, some youth causing harm, assaulting, trying to control their territory, selling drugs, things that are bad, but probably not critical. But they grew, and they started controlling territories. A few years later, they were actually a huge international criminal organization that they have bases in Italy, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, the U.S. Basically, a lot of major cities in the U.S. will have strongholds of.
Right outside Washington, D.C.
Yes, of course. And you have in Long Island and
yes.
In L.A. It's a huge criminal international organization. So they grew and they started, killing more people just to get territory or to fight against rival gangs or to, collect debts or, money or whatever.
He's about to get to the gnarly part.
They became satanic. They started doing satanic rituals. I don't know exactly when that started, but it was well documented.
Yes.
And in our arrest, we've even found altars and things like that.
Yes, I've seen them.
And so they became a satanic organization. And even when you, sometimes when you interview gang members that are in prison, they would say, I'm out of the gang. Of course, they're in prison, but they would say, I'm not a member of the gang anymore. And when they asked them why, I remember I remember the news outlet that made it this, but it's a very well-known news outlet that made this interview with a gang member in person. We allowed them to go into prisons and do the interviews. And the guy they asked him, how many people have you killed? And he said, I don't remember. He didn't remember how many, probably 10, 20, he didn't remember. And then they asked him, and what is your position in the gang? He explained how he went up in positions, but I left the gang. I said, why did you left the gang? And he said, well, because I was used to kill people, but I killed for territory. I killed to collect money. I killed for extortion. But I came to to this house, and they were about to kill a baby. And he, the killer that had killed tens of people, said, oh, wait, what are we doing? Why are we going to kill that baby? And they told him because the beast asked for a baby.
The beast.
To give him a baby.
Wow.
Couldn't resist that, so he left the gang. He's in prison because, he's a killer, but he left the gang because he couldn't tolerate what he was seeing.
So human sacrifice was a part.
Well, in the United States a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of days ago, I don't remember exactly, I saw the news that they were going to kill a young girl, or they killed a young girl, I don't exactly remember, because it was a satanic ritual. It happened in the U.S. a couple of weeks ago.
You may have come to the obvious conclusion that the real debate is
Tucker hitting us with the ad.
behind the scenes footage of what actually happened.
There's one more part. The last part is the best part.
TuckerCarlson.com/podcast. You will not regret it. So that's almost never described in English language press as clearly as you just described it.
No. Which is weird, right?
Well, you sort of wonder why.
Yeah.
If there's a spiritual component that's driving it, why not just say so?
Yes.
But I guess my point is you saw it as that.
Yes, of course. There's a spiritual war and there's a physical war. And the physical war could be, that's the unofficial.
Yes.
That's the unofficial version. The spiritual, if you win the spiritual war, it will reflect into the physical war.
Bruh.
Dude is tapped.
Impressive victory was because we won the spiritual war. Very, very fast.
Well, that leads me,
because you didn't have competition. I mean, they were satanic. I think that made it easier.
So I know that was a bit long, but I had to show the part about like how they prayed first, and then they, like the whole cabinet, right? Like all of his team, they prayed, and then they struck. And then he's just talking about like, because he pulled off the impossible in that country. Now you could like walk down the street with, money in your hands and nothing will happen to you. Crazy to hear him speak like that. Curious your thoughts.
Yeah, the universe has done something pretty incredible by allowing this guy to become president of a country on our planet right now, because he stands in direct opposition to the power structure of essentially every other country on Earth. And this is why the elites really don't like this guy, and we should all be praying prayers of safety for him each and every day, because he understands the metaphysics of what's happening in the world at these positions of power, that it's all spiritual. And he's just on Tucker Carlson just dropping bombs about it. It's wild. Like, he's got not only the knowledge and awareness, but the courage and clearly the trust in God, that this is what his dharma is on planet Earth. So it's incredibly encouraging and just astounding to see him come right out with these things that most people would consider like fringe conspiracy theories.
Yep.
That, the leaders of countries are Satanists and there's a deep state of Satanists and stuff. And here you have the president of a country who probably knows a thing or two about other world leaders telling you like they're Satanists, they sacrifice children. Like, this is stuff that has been like QAnon conspiracy theories. And you have the president of El Salvador confirming these things now. And there's been other, upper echelon leaders who have come out about this, more so in a secretive manner than an open manner. But what a positive sign for humanity that this guy is not only leading a country and proving to the world that it's not this impossible task to take a country from a impoverished high crime state into a very harmonious society very quickly. And even Trump showed this to some degree. I think there's people that could have done a way better job than even Trump did in a elected position, like maybe even an RFK. But this guy is showing that he took the worst country on earth, essentially, into this harmonious society in just a couple of years. The elites don't like that because they want to keep this illusion over everyone's eyes that, guys, it's just so freaking hard to run a country and make a country work well. Everything just breaks down. It's so difficult. Wars are inevitable. We can't stop drugs, can't stop immigration. Crime is hard to stop. And it's not. It's actually very easy to stop these things. In fact, you have to do a lot of things intentionally wrong to allow crime rates to be as high as they are, to allow wars to proliferate like they do. These things, like, if left to its natural devices, humans as a society are naturally harmonious because guess what? We all share the same common interest, that we want a harmonious, peaceful society. It's the elites at the top levels who want to create disorder and entropy and chaos because that's how they gain power. You can't gain power over a strong, united, harmonious civilization. That's obvious. And so, like, we've talked about this before on the show, that creating these conditions for harmonious societies is not complicated or like confusing or like rocket science. It's very, very simple. But you have to perform a lot of trickery and deceit and like long-term negative planning, which we know they do, right? To create these conditions we see on Earth. And so they don't like the president of El Salvador, this amazing guy, disproving their illusions of oh, it's, you know, we're doing our best, you guys. We've made some positive reformation in our last term, but it's a work in progress. You know, it's challenging to run a country in a healthy way. It's like, that's weird, because we all seem to want to have a harmonious society, and yet why is it so hard? You know, we talked about how crime is really, in a sense, a subconscious protest against a corrupt system that is not just and not fair. And when you have a very unfair society and justice system, you get people revolting against it through what we call crime, and just the dissension of society, the degeneracy of society unravels when people are unhappy with the leaders and the system that they're living under. It creates a very negative state of mind for the masses when most people can't even hardly pay their bills or feed their children. Yeah, you're going to get some theft, you're going to get some poverty, and you're going to get some crime. And this guy understood the mechanics of all this and says, we just have to create a healthy middle class to start with, and really everything else flows downstream of that. And he was able to do it in like a couple of years, let alone 4 years, right?
Yeah, it's been very uplifting to see that someone with these kind of values, who openly speaks as a God-fearing man, is the president of a country, period. I think that's something that used to exist, but it was coming from more of like a religious perspective, right? Everything used to be about God and praying and, oh, you're not a Christian, but it was more so a fear-based perspective. It wasn't because the consciousness on this planet was particularly high. I would argue it was likely lower than it is now. But now we're kind of seeing this swing back to where it's like almost becoming cool again. It's almost becoming the more masculine, strong thing to do, to openly share that not only do you believe in God, but you walk with God. So I thought that was super cool to share, because I know if either of us, God forbid, were put in that position, every single decision that I made would be coming from what instructions God gave me. I mean, how the hell else do you try to do that position unless you're an absolute egomaniac, and then you just spiral deeper and deeper into your own I-isms.
100%, man. Yeah, really good selection for positive news.
Thanks, brother. Cool. So I'm going to pass it off to you now for your piece of positive news, and then we'll get into the reaction clips after that.
Okay.
I had to become a Freemason, because you can't get involved in Satanism on the hardcore level without first being a Freemason. That was my official shrine portrait, which they took as part of my initiation. I was ready to become involved in hardcore Satanism. What did that mean? Well, that meant I had to sell my soul to the devil. I had to sign my name on the contract in blood. I had to sign my name in the black book. You gotta understand something. The satanic doctrine here is that hell is not what we believe it is, or what the Bible teaches it is. The satanic doctrine is that hell is this incredible party. It's like a nonstop, all-eternity orgy. So you're smoking dope, you're fornicating your brains out, you're listening to rock and roll through all eternity. And it's party hardy time. And before I could
Sounds
get on
exhausting.
the priesthood of Satanism, excuse me, I had to get 7 people to sell our souls to the devil. The other thing I had to do, and this might astonish some of you, is I had to become a Catholic priest. I had to go back to my original vocation, because you cannot be a satanic priest unless, first of all, you're a Catholic priest. And if that surprises you, I just suggest that you go and you read some of the medieval literature. You'll see that that is in fact the case.
Yeah. Just thought I would drop that bomb on you today.
Oh, shit. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, you know, I've heard that. But to hear it from somebody who was in Freemasonry for, I think, 20 years or something like that, it's pretty confirming. Now, most of you guys are probably thinking like, Aaron, that's like the darkest thing you could have possibly brought up for positive news. How is this positive news?
Oh, it's the most positive news.
For sure. You guys know us. We always have unique takes on things. And just this is part of the metaphysics of creation, is that what seems to be negative can be actually used for the greatest positive. And what seems to be positive can be used for the greatest negative. There's always a inference of the opposite polarity in anything. And so I want you to follow me on this, all right? So what he's talking about here is that part of Freemasonry, and I've read a Freemason text that did say this as well, but Freemasonry / Satanism, which is what Freemasonry is. Freemasonry is like the bridge on-ramp into Satanism, because absolutely nobody would just be like out of the blue walking down the street. Somebody walks up to you, hey, you want to join our Satanist club? They'd be like, get away. Like that's not going to work. People aren't going to be down for just joining Satanism. You first have to say, hey, do you want to join our spiritual gentlemen's club called Freemasonry? It's all about empowerment and spiritual power. And oh, that sounds great. And then you join and you go into this filtration process where they're going to move you down the ranks, slowly but surely desensitizing you. And I read a really amazing Reddit thread this last week. And there's a video on this too. There's a YouTube channel where a guy reads Reddit, like amazing Reddit stories, and this made it on his channel. But it's a story of a guy who wound up, he was a YouTube talent. Him and his buddy were both high-level YouTube talents on the up and up, and they got recruited in LA where they lived by a sort of like a Freemason recruiter guy who invited them to a special party that he gave them a letter and said, like, you've been noticed. Our enterprise is interested in acquiring your talents. Come to this party at this time, da-da-da-da. And he talked to some of his other creator friends, and they were like super hyped. They're like, dude, if you get invited to that party, like everyone who goes to that party, their career takes off. Like, you're so lucky. God. You got to go. So he's about to go, and he talks to one other creator guy who like goes white, pale in the face when he shows him the letter, and he's like, dude, under no circumstances ever attend that party. Do you understand me? Do not go to this party. So he starts to get nervous, and he tells his friend, like, I don't know, man, I had one of my other YouTube creator friends told me not to go to this party, and he got like ghost white. I don't know if I feel good about this. And his friend's like, oh, stop being a wuss. Let's go. Like, let's figure it out ourselves. So they go to this party. They're all given these huge gold masks to put over their face. And he said, there's celebrities everywhere. There's people I recognize, other influencers, pretty high level influencers are there. And guy gets up and he's like, all right, party is starting. Here's how it's going to work. You're going to go from room to room. You're going to participate in certain events. It's going to be great. And at the end, we're going to give you an opportunity to promote your career through our enterprise. So he said, the descent begins at midnight.
Oh, God.
The descent, huh? So basically, to make a long story short, he goes into rooms one by one that are representations of the 7 deadly sins. So the first room he goes into, I think, is like the room of like lust. And it's all these scantily clad women walking around and putting their hands all over you and like inviting you into these little rooms with curtains that you can cover up to do whatever you want to do. And he notices all these other people going right in and getting to work, having orgies and stuff. And he's like super weirded out by it. And I think each room, you're in there for like an hour or more. So he's like plenty of time to sin.
7 hours.
Yeah. So he's like, I started walking laps around the room to just keep myself moving. Because if I stayed still for too long, women would come over and stuff. And then the bell rings. We go into the next room, and it's the room of gluttony. And there's people in there with like caviar and all this expensive food. And they're just shoving it in their face, like grabbing huge piles of really expensive food and just eating it like it's potato chips, right? And so he tries to abstain from eating the food. And this guy comes up to him and says, hey, man, I encourage you to participate in the festivities because a slow drip is better than a flood, and then walks away. And he's like, a slow drip is better than a flood. What does this mean? So he goes from room to room, and he gets to a room where everyone's waiting in line, and there's a bookshelf behind him with all these holy books, the Bible, the Quran, the Tao, the Torah, you name it. And when you get to the front of the line, he says, which one is yours? And they would choose which holy book was theirs, meaning like, what religion were you brought up in, right? And then he makes you place your hand on the book with some kind of metal object over it. And you have to say a statement that says like, I bow to no one, I alone am my own God, I bow to myself. Like a super service to self like slogan.
Damn.
And then you get permitted entry into the last room. And he was like, I'm not doing this. This is evil shit. I'm out. So he gets to the front of the line and he's like, hey man, I don't feel comfortable with this. Can I cop out? I'm not doing this. And the guy leans in and is like, sure, man, just go to the back of the room and take your mask off and somebody will come get you. So he does that. And then the people that come to get him start shouting and pointing him out. And they say, the price was not paid. Let the profane be removed, or something like that. The price was not paid. Let the profane be removed. And everyone starts chanting it and they carry him out of the thing. So he's outside waiting for they told him like somebody's going to come to pick you up and drive you back home. And so while he's waiting for his like Uber ride or whatever for like 10 minutes. He looks in, he walks around to the side of the house and looks through a window and he sees the last room that his friend went into. And it's all these cameras set up and a bunch of people are wearing masks, and they would put each person in the center. And he doesn't say what they were doing, but he said basically the most heinous act you can imagine was happening, and they were filming it. And so I imagine that probably means they were doing unspeakable things to children or a child, right? And they're filming it. So now they have dirt on you, right? And the story goes on, and he talks to his friend the next day. His friend's like pretending like everything's cool. And he tells him like, bro, I saw what happened. Like I saw what they made you do in that room. And his friend kind of freaks out on him and is like, don't tell anybody. Like they could blackmail me with that. Like you can't tell anyone what you saw. So it sparked some thoughts in me reading this article about this story of this huge Hollywood party, is that this is what it means to sell your soul to the devil. Just like the clip you just played with the El Salvador president talking about this. What does that mean? Well, it means this is how you enter the negative polarity. Now, the way you enter the positive polarity is through what we call an act of initiation, whether it's Rosicrucianism or like the Essenes, for example. If you wanted to be an Essene, they would say, yeah, you can be part of our group. You have to live in our camp for 3 years and perform these spiritual practices to prove that you really want it bad enough. And after 3 years of this initiatory phase, we'll let you become an official Essene initiate. So that's how the positive polarity does it, right? Is, hey, prove to us that you're noble and virtuous and you really want to walk this path of integrity and light. Well, the negative polarity does the same thing, but on the negative. They say, oh, you want to rock with us? No problem. Yeah. We'll give you our power for sure. You got to give us you, right? You got to give us your soul, which means give us dirt on you. Allow us to film you doing things, putting you in compromising situations so that we have blackmail over you, that we know you're never going to betray us. And we'll be friends and we'll work together and it'll all be great. So you can see how easy it would be for an aspiring young kid in Hollywood who wants to be rich and famous to be like, yeah, no problem. I'll go to this party and do these things. But what they don't really understand is going to happen to them is they're going to be put in a position to do some horrible thing, almost always with children, because it's the one thing that everyone's like, that can never see the light of day. So basically, I'm now your slave forever, right? I can never betray you or speak out against you. I have to do whatever you tell me to do. And that's what's not told to them, is now you're going to do whatever we say you're going to do for the rest of your life. And so I bring that up to say that, we see these celebrities like Rihanna and Beyonce and Jay-Z and P-Diddy and stuff. And certainly many of them are like full on into Satanism and are doing these things of their own free will. But whether it's Katy Perry or like Taylor Swift or these different people who like seem to start off really well-meaning, and they were good people when they started their music career, and then all of a sudden Katy Perry's doing these Illuminati symbols in her music videos.
Did you know her parents were pastors?
Yes.
Bro.
She grew up in the church, right?
She's like you if in an alternate universe, if you went to the dark side.
If I became a music star, maybe. So here's the thing. We paint everything with a broad brush, don't we? And we think it's just black and white. You're in the Illuminati, then you wanted it, you chose it, it was your choice, you're evil. Not necessarily, right? Reality is much more complicated than we give it credit for. And there's absolute certainty that probably not a small percentage of these celebrities we see that we know are rocking with the Illuminati and stuff in Hollywood it's not really of their choice. Like they're doing these rituals on stage, Beyonce making the Illuminati symbols because they're being told to do it and they don't have a choice, right? They went to a party at one point early in their career, like this story just elaborated on, and they were put in a compromising position before they knew it. They were filmed, videotaped, recorded, whatever, and they're a slave for life, right? So now it's like, might as well just play with the devil than risk losing my entire life and potentially even going to prison, right? Like anything's worse than that. So like they're captive against their own free will a lot of the time. It's not like they want to worship Satan of their own accord. Like a lot of these celebrities probably think these people are freaking lunatics.
Yeah.
Like I have to do what these freaking psychopaths tell me to do. They said, make an Illuminati symbol at your next concert. No problem. Just please don't air my tape. And what did we just see happen with P-Diddy? He broke the contract and they released the dirt of him beating the woman live on the elevator camera and stuff. We're like, hey, this was 10 years ago. Why is it just now randomly coming out? Because this is what they do. They make examples of people to say, hey, if you're under our control, just so you know, you'll be the next P-Diddy if you even think about squealing on who we are and what we do. So then when the video I just played talking about the Catholic Church being infiltrated, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? That if you're the negative polarity polarizes more negatively by harvesting energy, stealing energy from people. So what better position could a negative entity possibly put themselves in than a position where people outsource their power to you in mass, right? And that's a little pun, but literally in mass in Catholic Church, right? Catholic priests are one of the most powerful positions that a negative being could possibly want, because you have congregations full of people saying, my entire spiritual existence depends on what you tell me, and I believe whatever you say, and I'm saved if you say I'm saved. And I have to confess my sins to you in a small booth and tell you all the bad things I do. Like, talk about an energy harvesting ritual for a negative entity to be having someone confess their sins to you all day, and they're just slurping up all that negative energy, for sure.
Perfect word for it, Aaron.
So like, whether it's politics, that's a huge position of power that negative entities will seek out. Whether it's religion, Catholic priests, we know that there's just a huge pervasive problem of child abuse and child molestation and trafficking in the Catholic Church that's been well documented. There's some wild documentaries on Netflix that'll blow your mind of just how pervasive this problem is. And it makes me wonder, like, what percentage of Catholic priests in the world are actually satanic priests infiltrating the Catholic Church to harvest the energy of the children and the masses who they prey upon? I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 50%, right? But the reason this is positive news is because this stuff's coming out. Look at this. There's the president of El Salvador is talking about this. This reel has like how many hundreds of thousands of views? We see more and more people by the day, celebrities coming out, whether it's Cat Williams, whether it's Russell Brand, whether it's, there was a rapper named DaBaby on Shannon Sharp's podcast, Club Shay Shay, recently, who talked about his interactions with P-Diddy and like the Illuminati.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty wild clip. So this stuff is coming out and they can't keep the lid on it, right?
Yeah.
And that's another sign of the awakening, is that what is in darkness must be brought to light. And these things have always been going on. The control of Hollywood, the control of politics, the control of religion. It's been happening for 100+ years now. But we just didn't really know about it until now, where it's all over the internet. You're seeing celebrities talk about it, viral reels talking about it. And now the president of a country of South America is talking about it. Like, dude, if anything shows how fast humanity is awakening, I think it's this intense darkness that none of us want to talk about this. None of us want this to be true. It's the most unfortunate fact on our planet, right?
The reckoning.
Yeah, but it's the reckoning. Like, there has to be a reckoning karmically for these people to get their karma. And we're starting to see it with the P-Diddies and all these different drips that are happening. And I think we're going to keep seeing a whole lot more of it over the next decade or so.
Yeah, we can't just go from like the planet we've been living on, the consciousness we've been living in, to like some fairy tale utopia. Like, that has to be earned energetically. Right. The inverse has to come through. So I have a question for you before we move on. So you were talking about like back when you were telling the story about the party, which is fascinating. And you're like, talk about service to self. Like, so they're basically just, you know, and you were walking through like, yeah, you can totally, you know, put yourself in their situation and see how, like, you know, they may have never had intentions for that. They, you know, but they're, what it is like, there's such an attachment to these material desires, to their living from their ego, whether they're aware of it or not, that they're like, I need to become this. I will do anything to have this. And then they go, okay, I can guarantee you become the next whatever.
Yep.
If you do this. And so it's like, yeah, they probably were not interested. I mean, this is some far out weird fucking shit. Most people maybe call me naive, but I don't think grow up thinking they're ever gonna do some shit like that. You know, how many psychopaths are there walking around? I think it's like one out of every 100. I don't think it's that many. Okay, so my question for you is kind of like, to me, one of the root issues is that the reason they're susceptible to the service to self path, Luciferianism, Satanism, Freemasonry, these weird fucking rituals and all that, is because of their unwavering attachment to what their ego has spun up for their life, if that makes sense. Like, they have these preferences, these needs, and these wants, and they will do anything to get them. And that is where they get led astray spiritually. So my question for you is like, it's a very controversial topic of like, especially because me and you aren't coming from the traditional religious sense of like, can these people be saved, right? That type of thing. And I'm not asking that from like a, will they go to heaven perspective. I'm asking that from like a, can someone who was an agent, like debatably like Kanye, someone who was pretty solid evidence that he was a victim of MK Ultra and that he was, you know, fully in that, had a handler, all that stuff, married the Kardashians, and then he came out the other side. Now there's controversy of, you know, he's still, I don't really care to get into that, but my point is you can see the difference in what he speaks on and who he represents now. That's at least my perspective. So we've seen some of these rare examples where people make it out the other side and they haven't been MLK'd yet. So is the process, I'm just curious of your thought process on this. Is it as simple as, let's say, a Taylor Swift? Do they have to get to a point where they transcend that consciousness that has them living solely from their I constructs, desires, needs, and attachments? Because that was kind of that's what keeps them, like when you talk about how they're all filmed, that's like the checkmate to ensure no one ever leaves or tells, and, you know, it goes on. But the reality of it is like, that's actually not, spiritually speaking, that's not a very strong backstop, if you will, because all you would have to do is transcend your needs and your preferences for this celebrity status career. All you would have to do would be willing to let go of some of these worldly things that you've insisted you need to feel worthy or whole, and then all of a sudden they have nothing on you. It reminds me of one of my favorite scenes from any movie ever, which no matter how many times I've seen it, which is many dozens, I get chills every time, which is in 8 Mile when Eminem in the last rap battle scene. Have you seen this movie or no? In the last rap battle scene against Papa Doc or whatever, where he says everything that was going to be used against him and he takes back his power. And he just drops the fucking mic. And then the guy can't even come up and do his bars because he's like, what the fuck do I do to that? He just totally took his power back. It's that spiritually. So it's like, I'm curious on your perspective on that. Is it as simple, just from a metaphysics perspective, is it as simple as relinquishing their ego's desires and then they become free and they're no longer bound to that? And is that why you think so few people break out of it? Because the nature of, you know, when you want to be a celebrity, you obviously have, I don't know if it's the right way to say, a larger than normal or a stronger than normal ego, but there's that, you know, it's coming from a wounded place of like, I need to be seen and I need to be, you know, loved and validated and praised. And it seems like it's probably hard to let go of that.
Yeah, I think you're essentially correct. The negative polarity thrives on ego control. That's all it is. So if you don't have a big ego, you're not controllable. You need to have a big attachment Like the negative polarity, the demonic activity literally needs an attachment point, an anchor point in somebody. We talk about like eating unhealthy food gives darkness attachment points in your body to bring more negative energy into your body, just like negative thoughts and feelings do. So if you don't have any attachments, they can't control you. So that's why they prey on young up-and-comers who have these massive attachments to fame and fortune to say, hey, we can give you everything you desire. There's always a contract, right? It's always an exchange on the negative polarity. And it's an exchange of your free will, aka your existence, for what your ego wants. And so whether it's like Mel Gibson, right? He came out years ago and was trying to expose all of Hollywood and the Illuminati infiltration. And what did they do? Smeared him as crazy. He's loopy. He's insane. Conspiracy theorist. Justin Bieber, same thing. He didn't play the game. He didn't, according to my friend who I talked about a few episodes ago, who was Bieber's bodyguard for 4 or 5 years. He said Bieber didn't play the game. He didn't accept the invitations. It was actually Hillary Clinton who was trying to get him to perform at her events. And she was like, hey, if you'll perform at my events, I'll give you even more status and wealth and power. And he had just kind of, he had a lot of sexual abuse, my friend said. In his younger years, I can imagine, right? Being 12 years old and being the most famous person on earth is pretty wild. So he had a lot of sexual abuse that traumatized him back into his Christian roots. So see, there's a negative working for the positive, right? Every catalyst can do that if you use it appropriately. So he finds his Christian roots again, says no. And what happens? We saw this massive smear campaign through the media for years to try to pull every little thing out about Justin Bieber to make him look crazy. And when you're playing for their team, like, dude, if they got pictures of Justin Bieber like peeing into a janitor's bucket and in Thailand sleeping with some Thai chick in Thailand, like a video that she recorded of him, they have all this stuff on everybody. How is it that P-Diddy, Jay-Z, like all these rappers, all these famous musicians, artists, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, we don't ever see a single piece of negative news like that? And like, how many things are these people probably doing that are like not only illegal, but just straight up heinous and terrible, right? That they have this dirt on them. They monitor them everywhere to make sure that they catch everything that happens. So they have more and more dirt on you over time so that they have more and more control over you, right? And they say at any moment, if you betray us or you expose us, we'll open the floodgates on you and we'll release all this stuff. And Bieber was apparently like, go for it. I'm not afraid. And he allowed them to do the smear campaign on him. So like all that to say, this is the way that the system works. And the fact that more and more celebrities are coming out talking about it means that system is crumbling. And pretty soon, I think even the celebrities that are involved in it will probably start seeing a mass exodus at some point of like, nobody wants to be controlled, first of all. And second of all, if there's unity among the celebrities that are under the control of Illuminati, and they say, hey, let's all leave at once, what are they going to do? Expose all 50 of us at the same time? That might be a tactic they could use, but it's got to come through, as you said, transcending ego, being willing to accept your past sins and being judged for them, forgiving yourself for them, and unity of coming together with other people who want to leave. Those are the only ways you can disentangle yourself from the negative polarity.
Very well said. You want to transition us?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move into our next segment of the show, which is reaction clips. And I'll pitch it to you, brother. What's your first clip for us today?
All right. We're going into some rabbit holes this month.
What? We never do that.
I feel like last month's was a little more mild. This month's is a little crazy.
A little spicy.
All right. I'm just going to play this. I'm not even going to intro it.
I was also talking about the Diddy lawsuit. It was a very fascinating lawsuit because he was talking about the person who sued him, Hollywood, and how it operates. And it very heavily implied that the government is controlling Hollywood, that there's some sort of a gang that is controlling Hollywood. And they freaked out about that. Absolutely. You can't even talk about that. Why is that? And then it sort of reminded me in these conversations that I was having offline with Ye when all that stuff was going down, he was saying things to me that I just could not compute. You know, he was talking to me about everybody having a handler in Hollywood, you know. He was calling people the ops, you know, this person is in with the government. And he notoriously said that Diddy was a Fed. He said that publicly. Diddy's a Fed. Diddy's a Fed. And everyone was like, Kanye's crazy. And now we're looking at this lawsuit and we're going, okay, wait a second. Clearly, Diddy was being protected by the government. Clearly, Diddy had a person he could call who would just clean up a mess if he shot someone, which the person in the lawsuit is alleging that he did, and that he was able to get it cleaned up and was able to get the media to lie about what actually took place at his studio. Again, those are allegations, but they are of some interest. And they're of more interest to me than ever before. Now, you may have recently seen me promoting this book, Chaos. To show it to you here, just so you guys know, this was just sent to me on my birthday this year by my friends, and I had no idea what I was getting into. Honestly, you guys, my brain is melted. I don't know what is what in American society, but I do know that the people in our government are in fact evil. It is called Chaos, and the subheading is Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. It was written by Tom O'Neill, and I'm going to very briefly tell you how the story sets up because it's impressive. You get this guy, he's about to turn 40 years old, and his editor comes at him. He's a writer for Premiere magazine in Los Angeles or in Hollywood, and he says, hey, it's going to be the 30-year anniversary of the Manson murders, which forever changed Hollywood. Notoriously, it was believed that it ended the hippies era. The murders were so brutal and so disgusting and so jarring and so shocking that all of those hippie communes that were all over and everyone wanted to drop out of college and become a hippie automatically ended. People were suddenly buying locks and saying, okay, no, actually, we can't live freely. It's not about love and rock and roll. We need to protect our families. Nobody was experimenting with LSD anymore. And so he gets this assignment from his editor, and Tom O'Neill is like, come on, it's been 30 years. What am I going to tap into here that hasn't already been said? And he starts making some calls, and he's kind of struck by the fact that people seem almost scared to talk to him. I'm going to tell you that you will not be able to put this book down. Chaos is exactly what it is. He ends up realizing that everything the public learned about those murders was a lie. He ends up discovering that the CIA was involved. He ends up discovering that the CIA knew Charles Manson. He ends up discovering that Charles Manson himself was a Fed. Charles Manson was experimenting on behalf of the government with LSD. Intentionally drugging people, that our government was obsessed with how to create how to control a mind, rather, how to create a mass psychosis. And they were conducting all sorts of illicit experiments on the American people, drugging people that worked at the CIA. This also brings us to MKUltra. We have discussed this before. You know, the idea that the government is involved in drugging people in an effort to control them. They say MKUltra ended. He talks all about MKUltra. Well, do you think it's ended? Me? No, I don't. Not after the things that Ye told me. Not after reading the text messages that were sent to him from who he says was his quote unquote handler. You know, threatening to drug him and send him back to La La Land, telling him he'll never see his kids again. What happened to Britney Spears? You know, I think
that's what Ryan Garcia said too.
To be able to confront the fact that there is truly evil, that demons are real. There is no way we can arm ourselves against this sort of an evil if we're not even able to acknowledge it, because it is scary. I'm telling you, when I was reading this book, I don't think I've read a book that quickly since the last Harry Potter came out. But I was chilled by not realizing how much evil our government has committed in the past. But then I felt certain of the fact that this spiritual draw that I was feeling, which I would say really, really wanting to lean into my faith, that journey kind of began for me for the last year and a half. I knew that this was the way, this is the only way. We cannot fight demons unless we are willing to acknowledge that they are demons. So I beg of you, get your hands on this book, read it, confront it, and do not read it and walk away from it saddened or feeling like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What if our government really is this evil? Walk away from it being assured that we already know how this book ends. In the end, goodness wins. That's the truth. In the end, God wins.
Bars. 2.6 million views, bro.
Whoa, dude, what a bit from Candace. Is she incredible or what?
Yeah. So it's been beautiful watching her transition to stepping more into faith and not so, because otherwise the way I see it is like some of these independent journalists, if you truly step aside and you commit to not having biases and you solely devote yourself to the truth, there's really only two paths it can go. You're going to become like Alex Jones, where you're basically just like develop mental health issues because of what you know. And it's too dark. And then you have to drink and smoke and, you know, just you got to
dissociate.
Yep. Or you lean heavy into a higher power. So it's cool to see that playing out. And that's exactly what this show is about. Things unfolding in real time. And it's not just the day-to-day stuff that we see on the news or that impacts us, whether it's economically or socially or culturally or with the government or whatever. It's also cool to see the other thought leaders. And that's also like a piece of this, right? So I brought up the clip of Naib or whatever. I'm bringing up the clip of Candace. Like these people are coming into popularity, into power, into influence in this unique time in history. They were not in power or wielding this much influence 5 years ago, 10 years ago. No one even knew who they were 10 years ago. And so it's a very beautiful thing to see, like just that unique spot that we're in terms of you can see the awakening on the ground, if you will, and you can see it from the higher levels looking down, because those are ultimately the people that influence the masses, if you will. I mean, we know a lot of that, but I don't know how much our audience knows about that. But also, I feel like she just weaved together a lot in that one clip. A lot.
No joke.
And I actually downloaded that book like 2 years ago and I didn't read it. But
wow.
I remember being like, just seeing the title, like CIA Manson in the 60s. I'm like, I've always been fascinated with like that era, like the whole free love thing and how like, I don't know if you've heard Ram Dass talk about, but after our last ceremony, me and Jax had a big Ram Dass phase where we couldn't watch TV. Everything was like, couldn't go on social media. It was too much. Yeah. So all we did was just watch Ram Dass for like a month. And nice. Him and, you know, Leary and all them, they used to talk about how like the last great awakening on this planet was in the 60s during the free love. But the problem was that it was almost like, have you heard of the quote, be careful of unearned wisdom?
Yeah.
In relation to like plant medicines and stuff, people think they've ascended, but in reality, they didn't earn it.
Mm-hmm.
I almost view that our planet did that with LSD in the 60s and, you know, Burning Man and free love and like the consciousness. We didn't like integrate it. We didn't earn it. We weren't embodied. So like we reached these states, but it was premature and then it shifted back. And I don't know if you've heard Ram Dass talk about that, but it's fascinating because I wasn't alive. You weren't alive at this time, but that was the last time that was like this on the planet. And that was 60 years ago. So it's, you know, we're always talking about cycles and demographics and stuff. And it's like, this is the next chance, but we can't go about it the same way where it's just like protesting and free love and anti-war and LSD in the park and not getting a job. Like there's a better way. And so this is our next, you know, shot at that. But anyway, yeah, I've just always been fascinated with the 60s. So when I saw this clip, I was like, I got to tap into this book now. It's fucking crazy, bro.
Yeah, everything happens in spirals and cycles. You know, everything loops around and there's different iterations of awakening. And I think this iteration of our awakening 60 years later is much more sophisticated and well understood about the true problems on our planet. Back then, it was like the military-industrial complex was like the first piece of the puzzle that they were becoming aware of. And they were like, hey, make love, not war.
Yeah.
Great. That's super awesome. But like, that was the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah,
and they probably, dude, they couldn't have fathomed like the child trafficking rings and stuff.
Seriously.
That'd have been nuts to them. But like, hey, they go to war for money. Can you believe it? That's evil. We got to stop that. So now we have this much more intense awakening happening, which means it's happening in a more accelerated pace than even in the 60s. Because look, everything that the negative polarity can possibly weaponize, they will and they do, because this is what their entire existence is predicated upon, is control of the masses. And guess what? It's really hard to control the masses. It's like really, really, really freaking hard to control the masses. One way you know, by the way, is look at all the pandemic fear porns that come up every like 3 months. They try a new pandemic.
Bird flu,
avian flu, Zika virus, this virus, that virus. In the whole history of the deep state planning these global pandemics, they've only succeeded like 2 or 3 times, right? Like polio, Spanish flu, COVID, that's about it. And all the other attempts that they've made, dozens and dozens of them have failed because guess what? It's a really freaking hard to start a global pandemic. In fact, it's so hard that they pulled out a new playbook in 2020 and were like, hey, let's just kind of manufacture one through like really awful hospital protocols and forced masking and forcing people indoors. We'll make everybody get sick because we'll force all the most unhealthy protocols possible onto them. And when we get them into the hospital, we'll put them on death medications like remdesivir and stuff, and breathing intubations and all that. Mm-hmm. So like, it's really hard to do these huge global psyops. That's why most of them fail. We hear, oh, big scary bird flu, it's coming soon, be very afraid. You never hear about it again because they couldn't get it off the ground. So like, again, take a positive viewpoint of this, that the negative polarity has the biggest challenge on their hands literally possible, which is control the planet. That's working in our favor big time, right? Because literally all we have to do is know that they want to control the planet, and it makes their job exponentially harder, virtually impossible, right? They thrive on the lack of awareness of what they're doing. They thrive on the fact that we're not aware of all the control tactics they're purveying. And, you know, again, the 60s was a big step forward to the awakening, but man, did they give us a blessing in 2020, bro, with the whole pandemic. Like, they just like slapped the whole population awake in 2020. And now they're like, oh shit, like way more people woke up than we thought. Now what do we do? Like we can't put them back to sleep. Once somebody's awake, they're awake. You can't unsee what you've seen, right? So now they're just grasping for straws desperately. And funny enough, that actually leads me perfectly into my next reaction clip. So same vein, but I want to talk about some of the other things that are being covered up right now that are coming to light. You probably saw this article, Jeremy.
Mm-mm.
You didn't?
Are they claiming that this bird is an alien?
No, this is.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait.
Millions of dumb ads on this page. This is New York Post. This tells you how many people are not subscribing to these news networks, that they have to fill their freaking articles now with ads. Look at all these ads.
Yeah. Wild turkey.
Like you get a small paragraph and like ad.
I know.
A small paragraph, ad. So anyway, this is the New York Post, bro. This was all over the podcasting space this week. The New York Post made an article on June 12th. Aliens might be living among us disguised as humans or in a base inside the moon, according to Harvard study.
Wow.
What did I just read?
Or inside the moon is great.
You want me to believe that Harvard, of their own budget, decided to go study if aliens are living in the moon or among us? I kind of don't believe you. I kind of think there's probably other things they would rather study with their budget, but they were told by their handlers, look, we need an article about this for this reason. We need you to say you were studying this or to pretend to study it. Aliens might be living among us, according to a study by Harvard academics. Like, what other institution is more credible sounding than Harvard, right? It gives you this immediate like, oh, wow, this is legitimate. Mm-hmm. They want people to start thinking about it this way because they're inching us towards a certain thing that Dr. Greer has been shouting from the rooftops about for years now. This kind of like whole psyop about alien invasions and hostile aliens. And this article was so funny, bro. They literally said, the researchers have also investigated so-called crypto-terrestrials.
Oh, shit.
Are they talking about me and Jeremy, or what? What does that mean?
Oh, shit. Layer 1 aliens.
Decentralized ETs. And then they say they might be
great.
dinosaurs that became intelligent or humans from the future.
What?
Isn't that crazy? Dinosaurs or humans from the future,
This
but
is
not.
This seems like who wrote this?
I know, right? Notice they don't mention these are entities from other planets and civilizations coming to visit us. They say, Harvard says they're either dinosaurs that became intelligent or humans from the future that discovered time travel. Why wouldn't they postulate that they could be intelligent beings from other planets? Because then they open the collective consciousness to the fact that we're not alone. It's not all about us. We're not the only beings in the universe. But in fact, we're just one of countless civilizations. I mean, what would unite humanity and end the pointless forever wars faster than us realizing our place in the cosmos and that there's intelligent beings here to help us, right? They don't want that to be the story. So they have to get ahead of the story and say, hey, don't worry, Harvard studied this, and they say it's dinosaurs or future humans. Hilarious. Then we have this clip posted this week.
Information about a 7-minute encounter between a glowing blue barbell-shaped
Looks like a
UFO,
shake weight. You remember those?
half the length of a football field in size. It came from 3 witnesses, including a Pentagon engineering contractor. This happened in southwestern Ontario in August 2013, about 11 years.
So he goes on to say like what the encounter was like. He saw this craft and all this stuff, tried to film it. This is clearly not a aerodynamic looking vehicle.
No.
So it's probably using gravity propulsion. So like we're seeing, this is Newsmax, right? We're seeing more and more UFO stuff on the news, which is again, like it's a slow drip towards the final thing that they're working up the masses for, which is going to be for sure a staged ET invasion or ET attack. And what's interesting is we had talked about last week, our buddy Stephen Greer, Dr. Greer, with his bombshell disclosure and the fact that Billy Carson's been making the rounds on the podcasting scene. And he was also on Patrick Bet David, just like Dr. Greer was this month. So we have 2 huge spiritual influencers on PBD's podcast, and both of them talked about the hidden technology, hidden ET technology that the government has been keeping secret. And that's why, like, we think that the fake ET attack they're leading towards is because they want to just scare people about ETs. That's part of it. But another huge part of it is that it's a distraction diversion technique against all of the ET technology that they have, such as scalar energy weapons and gravity propulsion, that they don't want the public to know about, because nothing would piss off the masses more than knowing they have free energy, 0-point energy, gravity propulsion, scalar technology, which could make Earth into a utopia overnight. And they've been keeping this secret for hundreds of years. Like, you're going to get a revolt if people find that out.
Yeah.
So I'll play this clip real quick from Dr. Greer on PBD.
Observed people in periods of enormous power and responsibility, when they realize, when I go into a facility and I say, see that thing? That's an alternative energy and propulsion device, what people call a UFO. Well, once they realize what these implications are, then they get scared. They get to the edge of the table or the edge of the cliff and back off. So here we are. Now, I've spent 34 years trying to resolve this problem, literally 50% of my biological life. And it's a very heavy lift and a very dangerous lift. But, you know, what are we going to leave to our children, your children, I have 12 grandchildren? What are we leaving, on this planet to them? And I think beyond that, there's even a bigger issue not being addressed. Some of these UFOs or UAPs are from extraterrestrial origin. None of them are hostile, but we have been targeting them with electromagnetic directional energy weapons since the 40s. And
remember that he said we've been targeting extraterrestrials with direct energy weapons since the 40s. Billy Carson's going to fill that blank in a second.
And those technologies have become more and more sophisticated. And, they have not struck back. If they did, the whole planet would come to a standstill, because I think they're fundamentally peaceful and very highly developed socially and spiritually. However,
how do we know that?
Well, because there have been a lot of people who've had contact and there's no evidence.
Do you see how bad PBD was shaking?
He's juiced up on caffeine,
Did
bro.
you see him? He's like, how do you know that? Dude, he was wired, bro.
He's
Can you
sitting
play
on a
that
jackhammer.
again?
I do have it sped up 1.2x.
He was like on the edge of his seat. Like, you know that?
Very highly developed socially and spiritually. However, how do we know that? Well, because there have been a lot of people that contact and there's no evidence.
He's like,
His chair is just vibrating. Greer says, because we've never seen evidence to the contrary, meaning we've never seen an attack or a fire back. And people that have encounters with them, even the government, have basically said that they're clearly benevolent, peaceful beings. But then he says right here that in that disclosure I showed last month on his archive he dropped, there's a whole section on this fact. Watch.
Now, there's some scary stories, what we call the stagecraft of, so-called abductions and mutilations and things like that. But those are all done by covert human programs. Those are lookalikes. We can get into that. I mean, there's a whole section of the archive on that. And we actually document this. I have top secret guys who come forward on the record stating point blank that they have been part of operations abducting people. So if you like this clip.
oh, shit.
What's interesting about that, bro, is that I watched a piece on Redacted a few months ago that I don't think I told you about, but it's from a journalist who went to Peru to film do you remember the article from like mid 2023, probably over a year ago now, where there was this thing about the face peeling aliens in South America?
Nah.
There was this tribe in South America that was coming out saying that there's ETs or alien beings that are peeling the faces off of people, and they're finding like dead bodies from their tribe in the jungle. And then like, I think a couple of mainstream news outlets did a piece on it, and they just said like to, wave it away. They were like, but we sent a journalist down to investigate, and they said it was just all made up and wasn't true. So this other journalist, independent journalist, was like, hey, wait a minute, this is like a crazy story. Let me go down there and interview these people. And he goes down there and interviews like the whole tribe of like 100+ people in this small little village in Peru. And they say for years now, these beings fly in on these hovercrafts dressed in black armor that are really huge. And they come down silently at night and they steal people from the village. And then we find them in the jungle, days later with their faces peeled off. And so these guys, they have like shotguns and pistols, and they have every single night, they have men patrolling their village now to keep these demon ET things away. And he interviewed a girl who got caught by one of them. And he shows the video on the Redacted piece. It's crazy. This poor little 15-year-old girl was going out to her backyard at night to grab some fruit off her tree to make fruit juice at like 7 p.m., just after dark. She gets grabbed by two of these ET beings, and they pull her behind a little outhouse thing they had, and they start putting cream on her face, and she hears them talking in Spanish. And she calls one of the ETs the gringo because she said he had an American accent in Spanish. And then the other guy was clearly a Peruvian. He had a Peruvian accent. And they were saying, like, he was saying, don't put too much of the cream on her. It's going to burn her face off. We have to just put just enough to get it to peel right. And she's screaming and kicking, and they're covering her mouth. And she got her mouth free for 1 second and screamed at the top of her lungs. And the patrol guys heard and came running. And the gringo takes off. And the Peruvian grabs her by her hair and tries to drag her. And the gringo's like, no, let her go. We can't take her. They're going to catch up to us. And he's like, no, we can't leave her. She already has the stuff on her face. And so he's hovering up with his hoverboard, carrying her. And the guys show up and they start shooting at him. So he drops the girl and flies off. And she lived to tell the story. And so obviously these aren't extraterrestrials. They are CIA agents or some kind of dark, black ops organization that have crazy ET technology. These people said when we chase these black armored ET looking beings into the jungle, their shoes, their boots have these like propulsion devices in them. They don't make any noise, but they just disappear from us. They just hop through the jungle and they're gone. We can't keep up with them. And they even float into the air, and then a hoverboard appears out of their shoes and they hover away. And they literally said, like the Green Goblin from Spider-Man. It looks just like that. And there's actually a video they captured as well of night vision of them shining their flashlights that they play on the Redacted piece. And they're shooting at this alien thing in the dark. And you see the being in a green light kind of look exactly as they described. So it's like clearly they're practicing these fake alien invasions on small villages in South America and stuff to see how it works, because they have to test everything out before they do it. And so what Greer's saying about this ET invasion, the staged invasion, seems more and more likely to happen. But remember when he said that they have direct energy weapons? Check out what Billy Carson had to say on this on the PBD podcast.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the story with John G. Trump and what happened with him? Have you heard that story? No. Well, let me read this. I'm curious to know what you'll say about this. So, January 9, 1941, 2 days after he dies, Fred Trump, which is Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump's brother, John G. Trump, the FBI calls him to determine if any of the belongings in Tesla's estate would be dangerous if found in enemy's hands. After 3 days of investigation, his brother says there's no risk. And then still, they took boxes and boxes of stuff that he had. And, you know, where they kept it to themselves. So some of the stuff we may know about, some of the stuff we don't know about. And this leads to a documentary recently that came out by Stephen Greer. I don't know if you saw that or not. The Last Century or The Lost Century. Yeah. Phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, it's great. If you've seen it, okay. So the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951 that has roughly 6,000 patents that are in there, kept from us where they have a structure.
Okay, so he just said the Invention Secrecy Act.
6,000 patents.
6,000 patents. If you thought it was a conspiracy that the government takes free energy technology devices and other things like this and keeps them a secret, now you know it is a fact. It's a government act that they even instituted to give them the right legally to take anything away from the public they deem to be dangerous technology or whatever. And they have over 6,000 patents. Can you imagine, Jeremy, what's in those patents? What kind of technology might be hiding there? We're talking about ending world hunger overnight, free energy, never paying for a light bill again, never paying for gasoline again, probably medicine technology that could end every disease on planet Earth. So they're keeping this a secret from humanity. Like, that is the greatest crime in human history, to keep technologies like that away from the public. But I digress. Let's go back to Billy Carson for a second.
May butcher some of the numbers that they'll pay you 75% of what the patent they think is worth. But if you ever sell it or use it, you'll go to jail, felony, all that stuff. How much access to technology and information do you think the government has? Or maybe something above even the government that none of us even know about, that maybe Nikola came up with or somebody else came up with?
Yeah, well, they have a lot of Nikola Tesla's inventions already done, produced, and tested. We know that he came up with the scalar weapon, and they already used the scalar weapon. We actually integrated that into different radar systems. As a matter of fact, the thing that brought down the UFO, the famous UFO from 1947 in New Mexico, right, the Roswell incident, that was a scalar beam that came from the United States military, most likely engineered or reverse engineered from Nikola Tesla's documents.
Whoa! That's nuts, bro.
Plot twist.
Did you ever wonder how the Roswell crash happened? Because I've wondered that. Like, how does a UFO crash? Like, these are beings that fly here from other galaxies and star systems. Yeah. And they accidentally crash on Earth. Like, I'm not buying it. There's something else to the story we're not being told.
So they shot that shit down.
Yeah, with scalar technology, which we know is crazy powerful technology.
Damn.
They discovered that scalar weapon, it wasn't really used as a weapon at first. It was a radar system. They discovered that it disoriented these craft and brought them down. In some weird way, it disoriented their ships. I believe that's how we began to figure out how to bring these things down, capture them, and reverse engineer them. I think the government has a lot of technology that they've been holding back from the general population for several reasons. One reason is for national security and global security. I can agree with that 1,000%, because there's a lot of people out here that if they got their hands on some of this technology, would try to utilize it to take over the world. I mean, that's just a known fact because it's the nature of mankind. The next thing is also monetary capitalization. How do you take this technology? They want to, of course, weaponize it, make money there. Then they want to break it down for civilian use and then capitalize on it there as well. So you have the combination between the two. Monetizing in military is weaponization, and then monetizing and capitalization in the civilian area. And then the third thing is drawing out technologies as long as you possibly can. Keep lying about peak oil. Keep lying about, resources and running out, and we're getting droughts, and there's no more waves, there's no more coal, and you make up these lies, and so we got more coal. Oh, we found more resources. But just drawing it out as long as we can. Now they come with the electric car, right? The electric car is more detrimental than the combustion engine. So now they're going to move away from the electric car, and they're going to move into hydrogen, because that's really much better. But they're going to go to a hydrogen fuel cell, a solid state hydrogen, instead of going straight hydrogen. So this is all about driving down technology over time to capitalize over hundreds of years. Some of their plans are 400 and 500 years in advance. Their business models and their business plans go out for 400 or 500 years. The average business person plans 3, 5, 10, but they're planning for hundreds of years in advance.
I understood.
So yeah,
Bruh.
I know that was sped up because it's a pretty long clip and I wanted to abbreviate it. But what he's saying there is exactly what Dr. Greer said based on, I mean, if anybody would know, it's Dr. Greer. He's interviewed every person that's ever had something to do with UAPs and UFOs in government and big mega corporations. And he says this is exactly the case. Their biggest fear is not us finding out we're not alone in the universe. It's us finding out how much technology, world-saving, life-extending technology they've kept for so long. And not only kept, but used as a weapon against humanity. You know, we saw the Hawaii attacks on Lahaina, some kind of crazy energy beam shoots from the sky and people are recording it on their phones. The entire town just happens to evaporate.
With the blue roofs saved.
And all the blue roofs are saved. Yeah, it's like, again, when we just wake up to what's happening, we don't really need to do anything other than be aware of these things. And just the light of awareness on these issues does the rest. It's kind of like being in a dark room. I could be in a pitch black room right now that's full of dust. And I wouldn't even know that I'm like breathing in all these dust particles. You shine one flashlight through that room and all of a sudden the entire light of that flashlight is illuminating dust particles floating everywhere. And I can see all the dust that's in the light. I can't see the dust that's not in the light, but the dust I can see is the dust that stays in the light. So in that way, like all this darkness we're seeing, we've talked about on today's episode, is like the dust in the dark room that we're breathing in without knowing it's even there. And so literally all we have to do is shine a light on this darkness to illuminate it and see it for what it is, and we can then step away from it. But if we don't know it's there, we're going to keep breathing it in and living under it. So all of these disclosures, the fact that this stuff is being talked about on the biggest podcast on planet Earth, like on a very regular basis, is a huge sign. Like we can't even imagine the implications of this 10 years from now, the way this is going to shift the collective consciousness. I mean, just to put the ideas in the collective, as you know, Jeremy, has big metaphysical implications. More people becoming aware has spiritual implications on the karma of these things coming to light. It's only when they're kept in darkness they can proliferate. So again, although it may not look like a big deal, yeah, so what? Greer and Billy Carson are on Pat Forget David talking about hidden technology, like big deal. It is a big deal. And we should start appreciating it more and maybe even thinking about sharing videos like this more. Because again, we're just trying to shine more light on these important issues.
I love that analogy of, you know, a little bit of light in a dark room illuminates everything and consciousness acts as that. So I just wanted to quickly show for people so they can see. I looked it up. The Invention Secrecy Act, 1951. Body of law designed to prevent disclosure of new inventions and technologies that, this is the funniest word in the whole sentence, in the opinion of selected federal agencies present an alleged threat. If you know how to read law, then you'll understand why these words are funny. Alleged threat to the economic stability or national security. So they're actually not even hiding it. To the economic stability. Well, yeah, free energy would definitely do that.
Right?
Curing cancer would definitely do that. Peace out, pharma. So it's like, that's interesting. And then just this little part. So it says, the Invention Secrecy Act allows the U.S. government to classify ideas and patents under secrecy orders, which indefinitely restrict public knowledge of them.
Wow.
And then the patents filed are required to be reviewed, and thousands of ideas and inventions are manually reviewed per year.
Look at that. It says the law applies to all inventions in the U.S. regardless of what the idea or invention is.
So yeah, that's great.
See how much they rely on us not being aware of what they do? Like, who in 1951 probably read the Invention Secrecy Act?
I know.
0 people probably.
I mean, there weren't even, try to imagine keeping up or even knowing any law before the internet. You would have had to go to your local library, rent this massive law book, and you don't know what the fuck you're reading because it's like damn near Old English. You're not.
Yeah, or you might even have to go to Congress to like look up their latest laws of this last week. You know,
that's why I'm saying
so many laws.
I think on our last episode when I went on that rant about how the internet, you know, it gets a lot of shit, like social media, the internet, AI, technology, it's ruining the world. But it's like, I think of it as an equal entity, you know.
Yeah,
It's also like there's no way that the average person now knows about various laws or conspiracies that got proven right, or things that the CIA is doing, or what, like all of that is because of the internet too.
100%.
So it's definitely an interesting thought.
Even scalar technology, bro. You can use scalar for just as much good as you can for evil. It's just as beneficial as it is destructive. It's just a matter of whose hands is it in.
Amen. All right. We're taking a hard right and going to give the people a little crypto news.
Give the people what they want.
We've been on a roll with crypto stuff. So I want to talk to you guys for a minute about something that just came out a few days ago from when you guys are going to see this. So my students will know about this. This is called XPortal. And this is one of the first decentralized apps that you can literally download on your phone right now that provides you a way to transact with the regular economy and conduct public commerce without cashing your crypto in. So Aaron, do you remember in the last few episodes when I was talking about like the stages of mass adoption, and I was saying like one piece of it is having like Stripe and PayPal and all those merchant options. Another piece of it is institutional adoption, like the Bitcoin ETF and now the Ethereum ETF. But then the biggest piece is like, how easy is it to onboard and offboard into crypto? Because if you don't make it really easy for the average person to transact cryptocurrency, they're not going to know how to go onto a DEX, a decentralized exchange, buy some stable coin from their bank, know how to swap it for what they want to buy in crypto, swap back out when they need to take profits, send that to their bank. That's complicated for people, right? Are you downloading it right now?
I'm downloading it, bro.
Aaron is downloading it right now, guys. He's real pumped. So you see this silver card right here, Aaron?
Yeah.
So this silver card allows you to buy, sell, stake, and swap crypto cross-chain. You can spend it with XPortal debit cards. So like literally, let's say you have 100K in, Solana or Ethereum or whatever. Well, normally like there's not many options right now as of, June 2024 that like you can, without cashing anything in, go get an acai bowl and pay for it with Solana. Like we have the Lightning Network with Bitcoin, right? And you see that's a little more popular in third world countries. Like I've seen in Costa Rica, there's people going into grocery stores and tapping their card and Bitcoin
El
paid
Salvador.
for their, you've seen that. But like in the US, like I haven't really seen that. Like we don't really have many options yet. Well, this is massive, right? So XPortal is one of the first, and they're doing really, really good things so far. So we bring in the non-custodial wallet secured with two-factor authentication. So they do staking and stuff, but that's not what this is about. The coolest part is just this. Make spending as rewarding as earning. You get cash back. They work with across multiple currencies and peer-to-peer and instant top-ups. Get crypto to cash in seconds. So XPortal is acting as a middleman. So let's say you go to 7-Eleven, Aaron, and you want to buy a Slurpee. Well, you're going to tap your card, and what's going to happen is, I believe, here's how it goes down. So you have, let's say, $1,000 of Ethereum, and you tap your card to pay for your Slurpee with it. They're going to, I believe, pay for your Slurpee. So they're kind of acting like a bank or an intermediary. They're going to pay for it with USD dollars.
Yeah.
And then they're going to debit or deduct that amount from your Ethereum balance. So it's like a whoosh, whoosh, if that makes sense.
So they're probably going to charge you a small fee, but you're still able to pay with Ethereum, which is amazing.
Correct. I'm not sure about the fees. We could look into it, but this is that next step, right? Where you don't have to sell and then try to pay for something. You literally just live your life and you use crypto for your discretionary spend. And for those who need me to spell it out for you, the reason that this is a game changer is because up until now, the mindset of how people view cryptocurrency is, okay, I'm buying and holding, and then when it gets, super high, then I'm going to sell and then I'm going to be rich. And that's not the point, guys. This is a new system. This isn't an entirely new decentralized way of exchanging value and storing value. Think about this concept. we all talk about how the dollar is slowly going to shit and how our government and the Fed are corrupt as hell and they're inflating our currency and they're stealing our money and their, taxes are scam. We talk about all these things, but then when we finally get a generational opportunity to participate in a new system, here's our mindset, Aaron. I'm going to put my money in, I'm going to hold it for 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, and then I'm going to cash out and I'm going to be rich. What are you going to cash out into? You're going to cash out into USD? So you're going to go back to the very thing that you're claiming oppressed you. You're finally cheering for crypto because it's finally an option at a new decentralized, fairer system. And you're just going to use it as a get-rich-quick scheme to then leave crypto and go back into USD.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. So things like this allow us to offboard. They allow you to not have to be in that mindset of, okay, I have to take profits now because I need to live my life, right? I can't go buy groceries with my profits, Jeremy. I have to cash out. Well, now you can. So it's a shift. It's a paradigm shift of you don't have to take profits anymore. You don't have to, well, I'm not saying don't take profits, but I'm saying you don't have to cash everything out anymore because you're like, well, I can't pay my rent with this, Jeremy. I can't pay my groceries, Jeremy. I can't travel with blah, blah. Soon you will be able to. And that is the point of what I've been speaking to for years to our students is like, we're viewing this from where the world is now because it's really hard to understand where the world's going to be in 24, 36, 48 months. But what I've been telling our students is like, guys, don't worry about like cashing out. By the time the market is where it's going to be in 12 months, 18 months, the amount of innovation that will have occurred because of Moore's law and Metcalfe's law, network effects, the rate of innovation in technology, we're going to have options for off-ramping. You're going to be able to, soon you're going to be, there's going to be Bitcoin mortgages. You're going to be able to take loans against your crypto. There's going to be way more staking options. You're going to be able to pay for everyday life expenses with crypto. Soon you'll be able to buy cars with crypto. You'll be able to pay things to the government. They're going to have a crypto option soon. Like it's all coming down the pipeline. First, we just needed institutional adoption and we needed the SEC to stop being ridiculous. And so now it's like, just watch what happens the next 12 to 18 months. So I share all that, Aaron, and that actually was just to set the frame. Now, the reason why this is epic is they just rolled out the Apple Pay integration, my man. So literally, you double click the sleep button on your iPhone, right, to pull up Apple Pay. And all of a sudden, now your debit card is linked. Look at this. That is a huge partnership right there. That is Web 2.0 meets Web 3.0.
Yeah.
You go into a store, you double click and you tap. And all of a sudden, you didn't even need the card on you. And all of a sudden, you bought a 12 pack of your favorite drink with XRP.
Wild, man. Well, what's interesting is I just applied for the card, XPortal card. And it says it's not available in the US just yet. It's only available in Europe. So if you're watching from Europe, get on this. But it's going to be available shortly, they said. So maybe a few more months. So I don't know if you can do Apple Pay before you get your card. I'm going to look into that after this episode. But dude, that changes the game big time. If you can use crypto as an exchange of value and currency, like through an app like that.
Yep.
It was just 2 months ago. We were talking about the first Bitcoin ETF being like, whoa, this is crazy. And then literally 2 months later, there's like multiple ways to just like do commerce with crypto now.
And that's just one option, by the way. That's just one company. I'm researching a number of others. This is part of the work that I do in the Level Up Collective to keep, things change so fast. I have to constantly update our work and our teachings. And because it's like, it's constantly changing. Innovation is crazy. So
it is.
Now that, we have people positioned very well and educated on what's to come. Now it's like, start thinking about off-ramping. And sometimes people get worried of like, how am I going to cash everything out? What if the banks, freeze my stuff or there's limits or blah, blah, blah. Because let's say, imagine you have multiple six figures you're trying to cash out. Like things can be a little challenging, or multiple seven figures or whatever, depending where people are at. So it's like, been eye-opening for me to show our students lately of like, well, you also don't have to necessarily cash out. Like, I think that is a mind fuck for people, because our entire lives, our parents' entire lives, their parents' entire lives, we've only had the United States dollar to transact with. Mm-hmm. There was gold, but you weren't really doing that since, you know, the House Joint Resolution 192 and all that. I just wanted to quickly show assets as well. So far, here's everything that you're working with in terms of what you could pay with. So your art, like, look at the amount.
Wow.
And that's just like their first iteration. Like you said, they're not even, they haven't even rolled out the beta in America yet. So of course you got Bitcoin, ETH, Matic, BNB, USDC, USDT. These are your big dogs. They even have meme coins like Pepe.
Pepe.
And then you've got some of these. I actually don't know what these are. These seem like meme coins or something.
Yeah. I don't see ADA on there, interestingly enough.
Yeah. So yeah, this will just be, you know, something that they build out and out and out. But I thought it was cool because even just the Apple Pay thing, that's a serious stamp of approval for the direction that things are going. For Web 2.0, because it's kind of like how banks have, you know, banks will shut your account down if you're buying a bunch of crypto sometimes. I've had it happen to me. I see it all the time on Twitter. We've had it happen to our students. They won't give you a reason, but you know the reason.
Yeah.
And it's a thing because they recognize that that's their greatest threat. Right?
Replacing them.
You don't need them so they're like trying to be petty. Well, for Apple to allow that into their app store and, you know, to be able to start using that on Apple Pay, that speaks to that's a silent nod of, you know, things are going this way and we're an ally. Mm-hmm. So that's cool to see as well.
Well, yeah. Like, what are the banks going to do if Apple and Amazon and these mega corporations are like, hey, sorry, banks, we like making money more than we like partnering with you guys and rubbing elbows, you know?
Yep.
So if we're going to use these crypto exchange applications that give us a little, you know, rub off the top of every transaction, we're going to make millions of dollars on this. Everyone's going to be using crypto soon. We're going to be the first. We're going to be the first to the gold rush type of thing. Then, yeah, the banks are shit out of luck because the corporations don't have to bow to the banks. Again, this is why we talk about the negative polarity is never, ever as united as you think they are, as it seems like they are. They're only united so long as they have one singular common goal above all others. And as soon as they get differentiating goals, they fraction off from each other and they pursue their own best interest. They're not actually united. It's false unity, appearing like real unity. So the corporations and the banks aren't like best evil friends twirling mustaches together. They are just having the same common goal. And up until now, the corporations haven't had a reason to split off from the banks and all the collusion that goes on. But now with crypto, they are. And like, this is the virus effect we've talked about on this show of what cryptocurrency is, that it infiltrates and it looks harmless. And once it gets in, it starts to proliferate and spread everywhere. And the banks, I already see this coming, obviously, which is why the big institutions, investing firms are already rolling out ETFs. They're like, hey, can't beat them, join them. Let's just get on the crypto train. And that's as you said last month, a huge positive news for us, because imagine having Bitcoin as your bank account. You know, right now with inflation, whatever money is in your bank account is like a melting ice cube, right? It's worth less and less every month. Imagine if you had Bitcoin as your bank account, which is just always going up over time. And so you're using Bitcoin to buy things. And yet every month your account keeps slightly going up. You know, it's deflation of value rather than inflation of the value of the dollar. And so, yeah, it makes no sense, like you said earlier, to exchange, to dump all your Bitcoin out at the next bull run, to exchange it for the ultimate shit coin, which is the US dollar. I say hold on to your Bitcoin.
The ultimate shitcoin. Yeah, it is, huh? That's great. Do you want to transition us into your next clip?
Yeah, because I got the perfect transition here. I wanted to get your take on this. You did actually tell me about this in our text thread, but I'm like, all right, this is what I'm pulling out for him to react to. First, Solana ETF filed by 3iQ in North America, incorporating SOL staking. And then there's this article I saw on KuCoin, BlackRock eyes Solana ETF, a game changer for crypto adoption. So we have this company and BlackRock eyeing Solana as their next ETF. Dude, is BlackRock moving quick or what? With these crypto ETFs. It's like every month there's a new one.
I want to point out, like, this is how fast innovation moves, guys. If you're someone who's been consuming our stuff and you've been really resonating and ideally starting to do some of your own research, but you haven't taken action. I mean, literally, last episode, so 4 weeks ago, my main prediction was that there was going to be not only a Bitcoin ETF, not only an Ethereum ETF, but that very soon there were going to be basket ETFs, as well as things like layer 1 ETFs, layer 2 ETFs, like these different categories of cryptocurrency. And before we could even get to our next episode, Aaron, we have what I was kind of speaking to came through. This is how fast things can move. And so the name of the game, guys, is to be an early adopter. You want to be in these currencies before these things that I'm saying come true. Hopefully that makes sense. If you're that type of person who's like sitting back and you're like, yeah, I need proof. That's kind of crazy. Or yeah, that'll eventually happen or whatever. But you do nothing with it. Then what is the point of having access to this information, right? So, Solana, for example, is something I've been invested in since 2020 off and on, but definitely this bull market, and obviously none of this is financial advice, but my point is, regardless of what you think about the chain and the VCs that are associated with the chain, for those of you who know crypto, if you don't know it, then don't worry about what I'm talking about. Just purely from an inflows perspective, from understanding how much liquidity is going to go into an asset, if you can understand that the first ETF in crypto outside of your king and queen, which is Bitcoin and ETH, the next chosen royalty, they're choosing Solana, that is going to attract an amount of liquidity and inflows into that asset class that is not a very big market cap. So if you have a 50-foot pool and a beluga whale jumps in it, that's not a very big pool for the whale to jump into. The size of the wave that you're going to get is way bigger than, let's say, a beluga whale jumps into the Atlantic Ocean. You're going to get some ripples, but there's already a lot of liquidity in that ocean, right?
Right.
That's what it's like to invest in things early. That same whale massively has an impact there. So, yeah, I don't need to say too much more. We went heavy crypto last time, and I'll talk a little bit more about some predictions at the end of today's episode. But nice. Just thought that was cool. Good pick on that, Aaron.
Thank you, sir.
And guys, it's just like, if you see the writing on the wall, please don't be that person that tells your grandkids how you lived through this generational transition and you didn't do anything. You literally, they're going to be fascinated that you got to live through. Like, it would be like us asking, our grandparents, depending on your age, but our grandparents, like, what was it like back when we were on the gold standard? And like, wow, you were alive in the roaring 20s? Like, what was that like when the Ford Model T came out and like all of a sudden cars, this thing called automobiles, were like mass manufactured and the average person could buy one? All of a sudden, one day it goes from buggy to that. Like, what was that actually like? You're going to have those kind of conversations with your grandchildren where they're like, they won't be able to believe that there was a time where there was like this fiat currency and crypto wasn't, like, they called it a scam and like no one knew who it was, or sorry, no one knew what it was or what it did. And then all of a sudden, like, there's these things called ETFs, and then it started to get accepted as currency and barter and exchange of value and store of value. And to go through all of that and to acknowledge when you look back, and I think a lot of people don't realize right now that what we're living through right now, this isn't normal. This isn't going to happen every decade. This isn't like just what it's going to be like. This is a very, very unique once in a lifetime opportunity in terms of innovation this decade with AI, cryptocurrency, and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine telling your grandkids about that and then ending it with, but I didn't do anything about it. I didn't participate. I just watched it. I just watched it while I counted my shit coins from the ATM.
My inflating shit coins.
Fiat shit coin. Yeah. So, that's my perspective and why I'm just like always shouting from the rooftops
yeah,
about it.
How many times have you heard this, Jeremy? Oh, if I was a young adult back in the 80s and 90s before the internet boom, I would have invested in Microsoft and Apple, and I would have invested in Google. And, maybe some of them would have, but when you look at how few people really were early investors in the internet boom, it's kind of like, no, you wouldn't have. You would have missed it just like you're missing Bitcoin, dude.
Literally. Yep. That's a big chunk of the nature of my work when I talk about these cycles. The reason that there are cycles throughout history and the reason that there are cycles throughout economic history, financial markets, and all that isn't because the markets are inherently cyclical. It's because of humans.
Yeah.
Humans repeat the same groups of biases, mistakes, tendencies over and over and over. So that's actually what creates cycles in the markets. The markets don't inherently have cycles. We project our shit onto the markets because we're the ones pressing buttons and playing the game. And that's what creates the cycles. So yeah, it's like, that's why I love history. I hated it growing up, right? It was like I was learning boring shit. My intuition was probably also like, yeah, this isn't true. But now I like to study history in terms of like economic history and financial history and stuff like that, like actual history, to understand like, okay, you learn about yourself. You learn about this part of you, right? If unchecked, here's the biases that you're going to be subject to. Here's the mistakes that you can make. So it's like the quote, like, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And so that's, kind of my perspective. And to bring up your thing about Apple and Microsoft, exactly. We're going through that was Web 2.0 boom. Now we're going through Web 3.0. And the same thing that happened with that is happening again, and it will happen in the next innovation revolution, whenever that is, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. It's the same concept because most of us are stuck. We're just driven by two emotions, fear or greed.
Yeah, it's a good point, dude. Most people think that like human behavior or cycles of human evolution and thinking are downstream of market cycles. The market is what determines human behavior. But you're very right. It's the opposite. It's market cycles are downstream of human evolution cycles, right? We go through these iterations of the fourth turning, and human thinking, social behavior, society evolves and changes in terms of things like these technologies. And that's what actually drives the market, not the other way around.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like, those experiments in quantum physics where they've proved like there was nothing in the box until you like thought you put your intention there, and then you lifted the box up and then there was something there. And it's like how our intention has to be on something for it to technically exist in the quantum.
Schrodinger's cat.
Okay. So like, think of it like that's what the markets are like. They're an inanimate object. It's like this machine, this mechanism, but they only are alive because humans aggregate their intention in the markets. So therefore, it's almost a projection of our shit. That's what the markets are. So you hear phrases like the markets are so emotional, or they're not logical, or the markets are driven by fear and greed. And we act like it's this external thing. But what we're really saying is, I'm so emotional. I'm driven by fear and greed. I'm irrational. That's actually what's playing out. And when I say I'm just saying human nature. Yeah. And so the investing game, the reason I like it is because it's like a stoicism practice. Can you detach from that?
Yeah.
Can you transcend that? And if you can, you have a hell of an advantage in the financial markets. Because with most people, money tied to their root chakra, safety, security, they're not very good there. I'll just put it that way.
Don't mess with that root chakra, bro.
Yeah.
By the way, Jeremy, what month did the Bitcoin ETF come out?
So Google says the first 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved January 10th, 2024.
I had a feeling it was January.
Yeah. Bro, that's how fast time flies.
So in 5 months, just BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF alone has surpassed 300,000 Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin is currently at, 61.5K.
Yeah.
That's $18.5 billion in Bitcoin ETF just from BlackRock.
Yeah. Let me share with you something crazy. Okay. So the gold ETF launched in 2004. So that's 20 years old. The Bitcoin ETF is, we'll say 6 months
5
old.
or 6, yeah.
The Bitcoin ETF stands a chance at surpassing the gold ETF total in its first year.
Oh my goodness, dude.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, where it's like scale, Metcalfe's law, network effects. Like, we've never seen anything like this. And
Not
we're literally
close.
in inning one. Like, crypto right now is at a 2 trillion, just so it's like 2.2 trillion market cap. We're going to 100 trillion in the next decade. That's a 50x on the basket of the asset class. We've never seen anything like it. So when I talk about a wealth transfer, people either have their heads up their ass, or they're so zoomed in that they're like worried about like cashing out in 6 months. And it's like, I just said a 50x in the market cap of the entire asset class. That's 2 times the entire market cap of the S&P, which is around 50 trillion. We're going to roughly 100 trillion based on my research and my calculations. I'll see you in a decade. We'll see how that pans out. I put my money where my mouth is, and this, we just haven't seen anything like this. Because with previous asset classes, each of them had pieces of what cryptocurrency has, but none of them had all of what cryptocurrency has, if that makes sense.
Right. Mm-hmm.
From one lens, it's an asset, it's an investment. From another, it's literally a currency. And from another, it's a hedge against tyranny. It's got a lot, and it's also property, Aaron. It's literally replacing real estate, and it's safer than real estate because the government can't come and take something that's not rooted to the ground. They have to find it first. So now jurisdiction exists in cyberspace. It's crazy. Like, people don't understand it, and it's going to take a decade for people to understand it.
How is the government going to seize my Bitcoin that's on this external hard drive that only I have the password to?
Correct.
Right? It can't be stolen from you anymore.
Yep. You'd have to be an enemy of the state. They'd have to be aware you have it. They would have to raid you. You would have to, tell them where it is, et cetera, et cetera. You could also just destroy that with a hammer. Remember your password, and whenever in the future, get a new ledger, restore it with that password, and boom, your Bitcoin's there. Mm-hmm. So like, it's just different, right? Versus like if you own, Mar-a-Lago, wink, wink, and they don't like you, they're at your front door and your house is being raided. Like, they're taking your property. That's what the government is. Like, remember that Elon quote where he's like, the government has a monopoly on violence? Mm-hmm. I love that. It's just like an aggregation of concentrated violence. And that's how they create order.
Only we're allowed to be violent and violate human rights. If you do it, we'll take you to jail.
Yeah. So won't go too much into the crypto thing right now, but that was a good choice. All right. We know what you think of this. This is baffling.
Welcome to Cognify, a facility designed to treat criminals like patients.
No thanks.
Instead of spending years in an actual prison cell, prisoners could finish their sentence here in just a few minutes. Cognify could someday create and implant artificial memories directly into the prisoner's brain. These complex, vivid, and lifelike memories are created in real time using AI-generated content. Depending on the seriousness of the subject's crime and their sentence, the memories could be tailored to the rehabilitation needs of each subject. The artificial memories implanted by Cognify would be seamlessly incorporated into the existing neural networks of the brain, preventing cognitive dissonance and ensuring the subject experiences the memories as if they were real. The Cognify concept offers a new approach to criminal rehabilitation, transforming how society deals with offenders by focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment.
I like that part.
The prisoner is given a choice, either spending tens of years in a prison cell or seeking fast-track rehabilitation through artificial memory implantation. If the prisoner...
It's kind of like the Minority Report.
Chooses to undergo fast-track rehabilitation, the Cognify device is used. Next, the prisoner undergoes high-resolution brain scanning to create...
Real quick, tell me this doesn't remind you of what ayahuasca allows you to do, for example, when they
a detailed map of their neural pathways. This brain map helps guide the Cognify device to target specific brain regions responsible for memory, reasoning, and logical thinking, such as the hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, amygdala, parietal lobe, and anterior cingulate cortex. Once the target brain regions are identified, Cognify is then placed around the head of the prisoner. The intensity and the type of artificial memories is then adjusted depending on the crime. Inside the criminal's mind, time would pass differently, slower than in real life, making them experience years' worth of artificial memories in just a few minutes. Synthetic memories are customized depending on the crime committed and the unique brain structure and psychological profile of the individual. Violent offenders could experience memories that are designed to trigger empathy and remorse, seeing their crime from the perspective of their victim, feeling their pain and suffering firsthand. Some memories are designed to trigger consequences and trauma. Such memories could simulate the long-term consequences of violence.
Doesn't this remind you of like what it's like when people do ayahuasca? Like you kind of get a life inventory and it shows you where you've been fucking up.
Or even a near-death experience.
Yeah. I'm going to play a little bit more because this is bananas.
Actions, such as the grief of the victim's family or the physical and emotional trauma endured by the victim. Artificial memories could cover a wide range of crimes, including domestic violence, hate crimes and discrimination, embezzlement, insider trading, theft and fraud. Cognify Emotion Regulation System could modulate neurotransmitters and hormones to induce specific emotional states, such as remorse or regret, which is crucial for rehabilitation. Real-time monitoring and feedback mechanisms could track the prisoner's neural responses throughout the process, allowing the system to adapt and optimize the rehabilitation in real time with new visuals, sensation, and realistic AI-generated content. To ensure the long-term effect of the therapy session, the memories could become permanent, fully integrated into the subject's mind, as if they were part of their own personal experiences.
So crazy.
While subjects are undergoing therapy session, valuable data are collected from all the prisoners into a central computer for scientific research, which will help understand the criminal mind and determine the best approach to tackle crimes in society. AI-driven analytics could...
How bananas is that?
I don't believe anything you just said.
Little bit of a slippery slope there, huh?
Yeah, like, you think that technology could be used for evil? Maybe.
I mean, wow. Yeah, I just thought that was pretty crazy. But you can see how, like, you want to spend 25 to life or 25 minutes.
See, dude, it goes back to what we said at the beginning of like the darkness always gives you a promise of exchange of like, hey, you don't want to go to jail, do you? You want to submit to our AI trauma system and
our AI trauma system. It is.
Like, that's exactly
they
what
like
it is.
Slyly slip that in there, like we're gonna traumatize the fuck out of you, and you're gonna like.
They literally say it. And it's like, and these traumas stay with you for life. No potential of healing.
You're going to come out like a shell of a human who's like scared of every loud noise and shit.
Well, yeah, it's like also, do you guys not understand that trauma is the reason people commit crimes and do bad things?
I know. They're like, we're going to traumatize you so you know how it feels. And it's like,
so you become a good
that's
person.
That's probably what their whole childhood was like. Dude.
We're going to take traumatized people and traumatize the shit out of them to make them into good people.
Yeah.
I'll stick with ayahuasca myself. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so we can move on. I just wanted to show that. I'm sure our audience is going to be like, holy shit.
I mean,
it was kind of a cool video though, right? Like talk about like futuristic fucking Orwellian world.
That whole video played like the beginning of a sci-fi movie.
I know. I was like,
yeah, you're going to see the main character come out of a cryopod. Like science fiction stuff.
For sure. Very sci-fi.
All right. We ready for bold predictions?
Yep. I'm going to hand it off to you, my man. Let us know what your bold prediction of the episode is, and then we'll bring it home.
All right, man. Well, I saved the most exciting piece of news of the month for last, so let's get into it. You saw Julian Assange go free, obviously, I'm guessing.
Got another Fox News alert for you. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is leaving the UK after accepting a plea deal agreement with U.S. authorities.
He is heading to a U.S. federal court in the Northern Mariana Islands, where he will plead guilty to espionage charges.
David Sponge joins us live from Washington at the White House. David, we didn't see this coming. You know, we really didn't, and this ends a nearly 15-year legal saga with Julian Assange of WikiLeaks. As Ainsley mentioned, he is heading right now to Saipan, the Northern Mariana Islands, which is a U.S. territory. In about 12 hours, guys, he will enter, or I should say expected to enter, that guilty plea. According to court documents released late last night, Assange will plead guilty to a charge of conspiring to unlawfully obtain and disseminate classified information relating to the national defense of the United States, which is part of the Espionage Act. He was behind the WikiLeaks release of thousands of documents from U.S. Army soldier Chelsea Manning in 2010. Note that as part of the deal, the United States government is allowing him to plead in Saipan, Northern Mariana Islands, which is a U.S. territory.
Wait a second. Did you know that?
No.
You know we had a territory in the Mariana Islands?
No.
More corporate U.S. property, apparently.
I know.
Anyway,
he'll be in a U.S. federal courtroom. Technically, he will set foot on U.S. soil, just not in the continental United States.
Correction, he will step foot on U.S. corporation soil.
Saipan is the closest U.S. federal courtroom to his home country of Australia. Now, guys.
So they're extraditing him to the closest U.S. territory to Australia, which is where he's from and where his family lives. So, you know, I chose this for my bold prediction because this was, you know, the bombshell news of the month. This was, I mean, this is like major historic news. Julian Assange has been, you know, a highly talked about topic since 2010 when everything went down. And, you know, for those of you who don't know, Julian Assange published evidence of U.S. war crimes and human rights abuses and violations all around the world in 2010 through his WikiLeaks organization. And he essentially exposed the military-industrial complex for what it is. And he showed proof that, you know, what the U.S. really wanted in Afghanistan was not, you know, justice for 9/11 and to stop the Taliban from getting nuclear weapons. That was the bullshit propaganda they told the public through the news. What they really wanted is another forever war, another proxy war that never ends. They can just keep profiting off of. And that's what they did, right? We got a 20+ year proxy war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Julian Assange popped the lid on the whole thing. So Julian Assange has been a huge loose end for the deep state, right? The deep state, I think, is terrified that if Trump is elected, he could free Julian Assange and get leverage against, you know, U.S. intelligence, the Obama and Biden administrations, through all the WikiLeaks information that, you know, the emails he's in possession of. So this was my take on this, was not that it's positive news because Julian Assange got free, which of course is very positive, but that's kind of the low-hanging fruit here. The high-hanging fruit that I think is much more interesting is why the deep state suddenly out of nowhere set Julian Assange free.
Yep.
So, you know, Julian Assange said that the emails were leaked to him at WikiLeaks by somebody named Seth Rich, who worked for the DNC at the time. And he said that he obtained them from an unknown source in the DOJ, which probably means like a good Samaritan who worked at the DOJ who thought, damn, the American people deserve to know what the U.S. is really doing in Afghanistan and all these war crimes and crimes against humanity they're committing. But of course, if you remember from 2010, the media spun the whole story as, you know, the source of these email leaks is, you guessed it, the Russians. Yes, it's those dirty Russians at it again, hacking into our grid and stealing our information. And so, you know, what's interesting about the Assange case is that they say that they're incriminating him for espionage, right? Exposing U.S. national security secrets. And it's, you know, it's kind of true, right? Because it is national security in the fact that if the U.S. public knew about what the U.S. is doing, there'd be a revolt overnight.
Yep.
But what's interesting, Jeremy, is they actually arrested him not for espionage. If you remember, they arrested Julian Assange for this false, like, sexual assault charge that they never showed any proof of and was never even tried in court for. You know, their typical playbook of how they go after anybody is sexual assault, get him in court, get him in jail. And he went to the Swedish embassy or something like that, and he was there or Ecuadorian embassy for like 7 years. And they finally, you know, extradited him and put him in prison. But my point here, Jeremy, is that they're obviously not doing this to be nice to poor Julian Assange. you know, who suffered so unjustly for doing good journalism. This is not fair. We should release him. It's the moral thing to do. We know that's not why he just got released. So why did he get released is our question. And essentially my take on this, Jeremy, is that I believe the Biden DOJ cut this plea deal with Assange where they said that, hey, if we let you go free, you can't give any WikiLeaks information to Trump or any other organization that would expose us. And as we know, when you cut a deal with the negative polarity, it certainly includes the classic clause of, if you do set foot in the US again, we'll kill you or we'll unalive you. And if you leak any information, we'll come down to Australia and we'll unalive you and your whole family. Got it? And, you know, that's the only way the negative polarity does a deal with someone that benefits them. So again, it's like, Aaron, this all sounds super negative. How is this positive news? Well, it all depends on how you look at things, right? Because when I saw this story, my jaw hit the floor in a very good way because I immediately understood the implications of what's going on here with the tactics of the deep state, the negative polarity, is that they're getting super nervous about what's about to come to light if Trump gets elected. And they're covering their bases quick and shifting the pieces around to cover their ass because, you know, they're acting preemptively here because they know that freeing Julian Assange before Trump does and cutting a quick deal with him to stay quiet will benefit the likely implications of what would happen if Trump freed Julian Assange and gained access to all his information. We already know with the way they've been throwing Trump around the ring, putting him through the ringer for the last 4 years. You know, you mentioned raiding his home, the fraudulent 34 felonies for nothing, on and on and on. They've been harassing this poor guy because he's, you know, not in their club and taking their power away. We know that Trump is going to probably get some revenge on these people. And they know that. And they're probably shaking in their boots a little bit, you know, clacking their knees together, thinking about like, what would happen, dude, if Trump released all the emails of, you know, the Obama DOJ during the Afghanistan war, or even the Bush DOJ, you know, all of the war crimes and human rights violations and crimes against humanity. We're talking about Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, John Podesta, Nancy Pelosi. All of these people would be indicted on this and be in huge trouble. So it's like, you think they're going to let that happen? Probably not. So when I saw this story, I was actually happy that even though they cut this deal with Assange to keep him quiet, it's clearly a good sign that they're getting very nervous because, you know, Assange is a true hero for doing this and putting his life on the line.
Agreed.
To inform the American people of what was really the story behind 9/11, and the reason for 9/11 was to start another forever war, take more power away from the people. And you know what, Jeremy? Everywhere I look right now, I just see more cracks in the dam, you know, by the passing day. The negative polarity, dude, is losing power at an alarming rate. And you don't see these kind of things when they're in power. They don't set people free. They don't do moral justice, you know, blah, blah, blah. They do those things when they have to do them to cover their own ass. And we're seeing more things like this happen. But the Julian Assange thing, like to set that guy free means they're really scared about what might happen if Trump gets his hands on Assange first. You know, they know that they've infringed on humanity's free will in such unprecedented ways that they can feel the hammer of karma swinging back towards them right now. And I kind of imagine them like, you know, cockroaches scattering beneath the foot that comes to crush them. Yep. They're like scattering everywhere to cover their asses in as many ways as possible to mitigate the damage that they know is on its way. So I saw this article as like a hugely positive sign for the Great Awakening. And again, just the cracks in the dam of the control of the negative polarity. We're seeing that dam start to burst, man.
Yeah. The only thing I want to mention on this is, did you see that the date that he was released, if you add up the numerology, was 666?
Would you look at that?
So your
symbolism
prediction sounds pretty spot on in terms of, did a little bit of a deal with the devil. It sounds like time will tell of what the stipulations were. Not because they're going to come out and say it, but
no, yeah,
I think that's a pretty spot on theory. I didn't think about that, to be honest, but I saw some stuff on Twitter about the numerology of it because it was 6/24/24. So if you add,
wow, I didn't catch that. That's super interesting. I mean, that's the classic, the 666 and everything. But I guess, my bold prediction is we're going to see more cracks in the dam like this. Expect to see more, like, out of nowhere, a huge breaking story about, like, Assange going free or such and such person getting captured and in trouble or whatever. It's going to keep happening, no doubt.
Agreed. All right. And for mine, I'm going to end it off with some financial stuff in my wheelhouse. Today's episode's been cool because it's been very, we've touched on so many different things. So I want to take people to school a little bit here. Not that long ago, Aaron, you asked me, I think you told me you had a friend who was, it was either you had a friend or you were reading some research on the economy, and you were asking me, what's your take on this? And you were saying that this person, whatever, was basically very convinced that we were about to go into a massive economic depression. You remember this?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. And, sometimes I take for granted how simply and clearly I see the markets, because
for sure
it's the same way. Like, I saw you post yesterday. You were standing on stage from Kyle Cease's event, and people are asking you questions that they just cannot see the answer to. And you're like, it's so simple. Like the way you respond is obviously always so loving. You would never say that. But I get that sense that you're like, it's very simple things you're saying. This isn't rocket science, but you have to constantly remind people, right?
Yeah.
Because that's your dharma, and you focus your intention and attention on that more than anything else. So it's simple to you, Aaron, but to most people, they're like, how did you come up with that? And you're like, it's very simple.
Not rocket science to me.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about the financial markets. Now,
makes sense.
I wanted to give people a very simple framework. So it's going to be part teaching, part prediction. I'll try to make this quick. You were asking me basically, like, do you agree? Like, this guy's saying we're very, very close to about to go into a, serious recession, debatably depression. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I have the exact opposite. I have my research points to the exact opposite. Now, this is where the financial game is fun for me. If you just go off of societal temperament, if you go off of what the news is saying, if you go off of geopolitical tensions, if you go off of the political system, if you go off of the average person's net worth, you would not touch the financial markets right now. Right?
Yeah, totally.
If you went off of any normal barometer of what a normal person, if you go out onto the street and you ask 100 people, are you doing good, great, bad, or horrible? A lot, you're going to get a certain perception that's going to skew you to be like, okay, things are shitty right now, right?
Sure.
Like, it's about to collapse. And this is why I wanted to share this, because our audience is largely the spiritual community, right? And what do we see all the time in the spiritual community? Obviously, people like us, I'll say, are much more aware than the average person in the world. We're much more aware of the shit going on, right? Like, look at everything we just went into in today's show. I mean, we went from the CIA and MK Ultra to aliens to direct energy weapons to them hiding free energy to crypto. Like, it's, there's a lot of different things going on. It's very easy to consume all that and go, yeah, it's all going to burn. I'm not touching it. And the irony is that when you study the most destructive time periods where there has been the most collapse, that is when generational wealth is made. Did you know that, Aaron? It is not from 2002 to 2022 when there's a damn near 20-year bull market. That isn't when the generational wealth is made. I know that's like contrary. It seems counterintuitive. Generational wealth is made when there is collapse, turmoil, opportunity, and you can buy things for pennies on the dollar.
Makes sense.
Yep. So we only have so many of those, right? And the last iteration was like, the Roaring 20s. That was right around the time of World War I. And so there's if you were living through that time, you're first and foremost, you're an absolute savage. You're built different. You're a product of World War I, famine, you know, barely being able to feed yourself, just trying to survive. And then all of a sudden you're ushered into this era of unprecedented abundance, the Roaring 20s. What we were going through this decade, I see as a culmination of that. Now, I don't think it's at all going to be like that. You know, people were struggling to feed themselves, the average person. No, it's a little bit different now. But I bring that up in terms of to show the contrast of like, don't mistake what's going on socially, geopolitically, in terms of division, in terms of wealth gap. That isn't the same thing as the economy. Because the financial markets are propped up by one thing. What do you think that is, Aaron?
Financial markets are propped up by one thing?
One word. It starts with an L. It's on the screen.
Liquidity?
Yes, sir. Well done, Aaron.
I was going to say public perception?
They are propped up by liquidity. Here's what's crazy about that. Some Admiralty Maritime water words, right? What's crazy about understanding that they are propped up by liquidity is that it is predictable. There's something called the business cycle. Do you see right here where it says long-term cycle?
Yeah.
This is the predictable business cycle that lasts 65 months. I'm putting you guys on game that you would probably only learn if you had a master's in business or finance.
Wow.
65 months it typically takes from peak to peak, trough to trough. Right? So if we remove the squiggly and we just kept this, it would look like a perfect stochastic, right? Boom,
right.
Boom, boom. Okay. But that's life in a vacuum. Okay. That's before humans touch it. That's a vacuum. But this is reality. Global liquidity is reality.
Yeah.
But do you see nonetheless how strong the correlation is there?
Totally.
It's almost, I mean, like since 2018, look at that. Almost perfect.
Pretty amazing.
And yet when you're in it, when we were in it, Aaron, 2020, 2021, 2022, if you look around, what are people's sentiment of the direction that the future is going in?
Down.
Straight doom and gloom. And the reality is this is where I was loading the motherfucking boat.
Yeah.
Because I understand how simple it is. It's so simple. All you have to understand is liquidity. Now, of course, there's so many different lenses, right? It would behoove everyone listening, if you want to build wealth, to understand technical analysis, understand fundamental analysis, understand macroeconomic analysis, at least at a foundational level. You don't have to be an expert. But I wanted to give everyone, and this will tie into my prediction in a second, a very simple framework, which is also at the same time a prediction. You can see here we bottomed in 2022. I believe it was June, July. I had my bags packed by October, September even, 2022. Now, that was long before people knew we were out of a recession. Would you agree, Aaron?
Yeah, I would say so.
Most people, I mean, we've went from Bitcoin being sub 18K to, I'd say it took us hitting 45 before people started going, maybe we're not in a recession anymore.
Yeah.
That was already a 2 almost 5x.
Yeah.
So that's the different, like when they say there's levels, that's the difference between investing when you have the right financial models and not, right? Because otherwise it could have been a really stupid thing to be buying then, because it could just go down another 50%. If we're in a depression, you wouldn't want to buy then, right? That's the help that models can provide you. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to give everyone a very simple model, global liquidity. This does not just apply to crypto. This is global liquidity. This applies to you if you're investing in commodities, if you're investing in Forex and foreign exchange markets. It applies to the stock market, US and global. It applies to cryptocurrency. This applies to business owners, entrepreneurs. This applies to banks and central banks. This is the market in one graph. And what this means, Aaron, is that both booms and busts are predetermined. And yet, remember what I was saying about human nature. When we start to get about here, Aaron, you're going to start to hear a hell of a lot of people forecasting things as if history doesn't repeat itself in an undefeated fashion. Yeah. Saying, oh, four more years of this, we've entered a new era. Trump's in office now, so we're going to Bull market throughout his office? Nope. Doesn't matter. Presidents can't affect this. A single central bank can't affect this. This chart is undefeated. So.
Wow.
I know, right? It's almost like I shouldn't give this out for free on the internet. We want you to win, guys. What'd you say, Aaron?
What does the x-axis stand for?
This right here?
Yeah.
So this is just like their measure of, you could just think of it as percentage, 0 to 100% of like how much liquidity has been injected. It's not a numerical like 100 trillion, 80 trillion. It's more of just the percentage of total expansion, and then back to total possible expansion, and then total possible contraction. So it's not always going to reach total possible expansion, and it's not always going to reach total possible contraction. Like you'll see this, this cycle right here was more like a moderate up and not as intense of a down. But when we have the really intense ups, we have the really intense downs. Just like in the spiritual world, what we're talking about, right? That polarity. When the pendulum swings 90% this way, it's probably going to be a swift the other way too. When it's not as aggressive this way, it's probably not as aggressive back out to reach equilibrium. So my point is, do you see this pointing up, Aaron?
I do.
It is 20. We're heading into, we're right about here. And the next part of what we have ahead of us, the next 12 to 18 months until the end of, you guys can read it yourself, right here, 2025 ending, going into 2026. Right now, we're in the middle of 2024. That's 18 months of expansion, meaning interest rates are lowered, the money supply is expanded, central banks printing currency. We're going to experience another 2020. And I don't think people are prepared for that. I think people think that that was a one-off thing, that the dollar was going to collapse after that one time because they did print a ridiculous amount, that we're going to be in stagflation like the 1970s. I understand all these perspectives. All I'm saying is here's my prediction for those of you who give a shit. Bull market across asset classes until the end of 2025. If you're sitting here not in this, you're sacrificing your next chance at wealth for the next 4 years. But it's deeper than that, because when you overlay this framework, Aaron, with what I'm always talking about, the generational opportunity, the whole fourth turning thing, how many more of these are we going to get before the dollar collapses? Every time we get one of these, the currency gets devalued more. Then we pull it back to try to even it out, but it doesn't even it out. We know that because how many times is our debt to GDP ratio in America? They don't have the money to service the debt. So they only have one option. They have to print more. The debt repayment is about to come due right here, Aaron. Oh, wow. How are they going to pay it?
Print.
There's only one option. And what happens when they print?
Inflation.
And so what that means is that if you think your money's been getting stolen from you up until now, just wait till they do it again.
You ain't seen nothing yet, kid.
Just wait till they do it again. And guess what? Some of you will ironically be happy at that because your house value is going to show a little bit more appreciation. And the irony is that that's just a reflection of how expensive everything in life has gotten and will continue to get. And those who are not actively investing, when I say actively, I don't mean you're a trader or something. I mean actively meaning you don't have liquidity in the markets when we're going through a massive, let's say we're around 30 to 40 right now. From 40 to 90, you're not going to ride that. Now, that's not a stock price or anything like that. I'm just saying you can see percentage based, we're maybe right here, about 40%. We have the most vertical part of the cycle coming before they start going, okay, quantitative tightening, right? Then they go back into what we're just coming out of 2 years of that I've been talking about, Aaron. So I've spent a lot of time on this show talking about the past and present, but I haven't really talked too much about where that fits into global liquidity. We just came out of roughly 2 years of a recession that I've been talking about, and that's what this was. Some would say the reason that was is because things broke, but in reality, from this perspective, it's all predetermined. They knew what expanding the money supply would do. That is what creates the business cycle. So this back line, Aaron, is the business cycle. There's an expansion phase. That's when interest rates are low. It's very easy to get credit and debt. Businesses are thriving because, you know, they can borrow for almost for free. That benefits the consumer. Everyone's happy. Money is easy. The supply is expanded, so there's a lot more money in existence. And then they let you play at the party for about 2 years, and then they go, okay, now we're going to take some chips off the table. And that's when people start to have short-term memory loss because they can't think long-term and they don't have proper financial models. And they freak out as if it hasn't happened over and over and over and over and over again. And all you need to do is prepare based on this. And when they start taking chips off the table, the economy freaks out. They raise interest rates a bit. The economy freaks out and acts like this is the time. And then the media machine plugs into it and they start hitting you with the same articles that you sometimes send me, Aaron, where you're like, yo, is this legit? And I'm like, definitely not. That is how this all works. If you can master your emotions and understand some very simple models around liquidity, this chart is damn near undefeated. So prediction, if you're not where you want to be financially, or even if you are and you want to make more so you can fucking give it away and help humanity, the next 12 to 18 months, I'm an odds guy, so I don't speak in absolutes. So I'll say that the next 12 to 18 months, the odds are highly in your favor in terms of wealth appreciation if you are invested in the right assets and asset classes. If you are not, then this period is going to simply be a period where your wealth slowly declines because inflation will still be present. And you need to be earning about an 8 to 10% return just to break even between the rising cost of living and the devaluation of our currency. So then they're going to print more, and then that's going to make it even worse, right? So this is where, when I talk about generational wealth transfers, Aaron, that's literally how it happens. It gets stolen from your neighbor who isn't investing, and it gets handed to you. Not directly, but it does, because if your neighbor's only working, trading his time for money, and then he takes those after-tax inflation dollars, and then he spends them in the economy, and then that person hires you and joins 40U, and then you invest that into Bitcoin, that appreciates over time for you, whereas for him, that continues to go down. Everything's costing more. The $1 that he's trying to barter with isn't worth as much over time. So, and then the cycle repeats, right? So, you know, I didn't make the rules, just wanted to give you guys the info. So my prediction, next 12 to 18 months across Bitcoin, crypto, stock market, and even select commodities should be quite prosperous. And this aligns with my thesis. So what I like to do is I like to overlay theses and look for similarities, because if I have one thesis that makes a lot of sense and another framework that makes a lot of sense, but they disagree, then that's kind of concerning, right? Because that means I don't have much certainty
one of them
that this is actually going to play out.
Yeah.
Whereas multiple of these different frameworks are all pointing to the same thing. So whether you want to look at it from the fourth turning lens, whether you want to look at it from the seasonality lens and understanding that we're about to likely have a Republican president and an election year, which is typically very bullish for markets because they'll do whatever they need to get reelected, or whether you want to look at it from the liquidity perspective and you understand that global liquidity is being expanded because the business cycle is ending its contraction phase and we're going into the expansion phase where they're going to expand the money supply. Remember this in the next few months when Powell cuts rates and they start all of a sudden, you know, they don't outright say, we're going to devalue our currency and inflate the currency. They call it quantitative easing. They give it more sexy names. What that means is they're going to print money to devalue the currency. They're going to steal it from the middle class, and then they're going to buy government bonds and treasuries that prop up the market, which give it to the 1%, like myself. If you're invested in the markets, as they say, what is it? A rising tide lifts all boats. If you're invested in the markets, you benefit. If you're not invested, then your money is being stolen from you and handed to me. And I don't want that to be the case. I want our people to win. That's the whole point of the Conscious Wealth brand and what I'm doing here. So wanted to give that as for those who give a fuck message. You do with it what you will, but yeah, it just bothers me how much doom and gloom we see. It's one thing to acknowledge what's going on because this planet has been a service to self planet for a long time. That's a whole different conversation from saying just because this is going on does not mean that that's necessarily going to be reflected right now in the financial markets. It would if the markets were logical, but the markets aren't logical. They're liquidity driven and they're emotional. So writing's on the wall, but for those who are like, look, things are going to shit. I don't want to have kids. I don't want to invest. You know, that's the type of person who's going to remain poor.
Yeah.
It takes risk. It's called risk for a reason. I don't see this as risky, but risk means you got to do something. Do something about it. Otherwise, enjoy
poverty.
Enjoy where you're at. If you're cool with it, that's cool.
But
yeah, that's my prediction. Any thoughts?
If you don't like it, you could think about trading in those USD shit coins for Bitcoins.
Yeah.
And that is
or any
not
other
financial
assets.
advice.
There's a lot of options.
Right. Yeah. Well, the chart, when you show it, it's clearly just the law of vibration at work.
Literally.
What goes up must come down. What goes down must come up. Would you say, Jeremy, that it seems to be the case for me when I watch the news cycle, and the person that I mentioned that was saying it's all gonna collapse, we're gonna have another great recession, it was like some Fox News clip or something on YouTube I saw from a financial expert predicts incoming financial crisis, and I sent it to you like, do you agree with this? And there it is again, the media giving an opposite take of what's happening in reality. So would you say that that's one of the strategies, is that when it's about to go up, the media is like, oh, it's all going to go down, panic. And when it's about to go down, the media is like, hey, it's doing great, don't sell, the market's awesome right now.
It's literally why I haven't even been investing for a decade, and yet I'm outperforming OGs, because I inherently have always been a contrarian. And that's all that the financial media does.
Yeah.
They will scare you out of your positions. First off, you have to understand that the financial media is largely connected to and owned by the banks, and the banks own the brokerages. So it would be like if I'm paying this subsidiary to give you this information to influence your actions so that I can buy your position from you. Once it doubles and I run it up, then I'm going to sell it back to you. But before I sell it back to you, I'm going to put out some pieces about how this is the next Apple or Amazon, get you real hyped. Remember, fear and greed, that's it. Get you real like, oh my God, this is it. This is my opportunity. Then I'm going to sell it back to you, even though you sold it to me at $20 6 months ago. And then when I'm ready, when I'm like, okay, I've had enough, then now I'm going to start putting out hit pieces, right? They do this a lot with Tesla. I'm going to start putting out hit pieces about how Teslas aren't safe and how Elon's spending too much time on X and Twitter, and he's a threat to Tesla, and they're not actually going to do, what they've set out to do. And then I'm going to get you to sell off, and then I'm going to buy your position from you, knowing that the next 6 months, it's actually going to be a good time to own that. And then it's going to run up, and then I'm going to start telling you how, look, this is the biggest winner over the last 6 months. It's outperformed X, Y, and I'm going to get you, oh, this is a great buy. I knew I should have kept it. And the cycle repeats. It's exhausting, man. Yeah. It's exhausting. I don't watch financial media, but for the first 18 months of investing, I did, because it is good to learn the words, learn how the machine works, learn like how quarterly earnings works and their vocabulary and that stuff. I do recommend that for our students, but you got to understand. You don't watch the financial media ever to take action on anything you're hearing. You watch it to learn the game. That's it. It's like the show Billions. For anyone who wants to understand how the markets work, watch the show Billions. It's on Showtime.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dude, you really delivered on the bold prediction this month.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we have funny comments or who are like offended that me and you, or I'll just speak for myself. I'm sure you've experienced it too. Once in a while, people get offended that we dare charge for our work, our life's work that we put thousands and thousands of hours into. But anyway, I also like to put enough out for free where it's like, look, I don't need your money. I don't need you to work with us to change your life. I don't necessarily want you to work with us feeling like you're reliant on us to change your life. So
right.
I like to, give enough out that there's between what you've put out spiritually and what I've put out financially, it's all there for you guys.
There.
It is all there for you. Our offerings are if you want, you know, more accountability, community, and a higher level of mastery. That's kind of, you know, what that is there for. But by no means, you know, do you need to, for those who feel like they can't afford it or whatever, like, look, if you got free time, I just handed you something you would only learn if you had a finance and an MBA in finance. So study it, prove me wrong, create a thesis, start practicing. Like, it's all there for you. How do you think I got here? You know, I don't have an MBA in finance. I never worked on Wall Street. I don't know, you know, all the insider stuff. And yet, how am I outperforming them? The world is ours for the taking, man. And it all comes back to our theme of the show, which is like, all of this is positive. It's such a beautiful opportunity that we have. It's such an amazing time on earth. And one of the key takeaways you guys can hopefully walk away from today is to never mistake what is going on socially and culturally with necessarily the economy. Otherwise, I mean, if you go off of what the news and what society and social media is showing you, I can't think of a time in the last 2 decades you would have wanted to invest. There's always a scare. There's always a pandemic. There's always a geopolitical conflict. There's always a political issue. There's always a social issue. There's always a gender issue. There's always a demographic issue. There's always a declining birth rates. There's always an abortion issue. There's always a race issue. There's always a fighting issue. There's always a gang issue. There's always going to be an issue. That's what the machine does. They're an advertising agency harvesting your clicks. Mm-hmm. So like you have to separate that. And so sometimes, yeah, I get a little frussied. That's what me and Jax call frustrated. Around people who are like, what do you think about all of this? But then like, you're saying to do this. And it's like, well, those aren't the same thing. It's as if we're saying we need to be in a utopia for there to be economic opportunity. And the irony is that what presents economic opportunity is asymmetric upside because enough other people don't see it. Yeah. Welcome to the landscape. People aren't seeing the opportunity right in front of them because we have PTSD from 2020 to 2023. Look what happened. People are afraid. People get shell shocked. We have short-term bias. You can't zoom out and understand and look at life in decades. And I'm just telling you, things are going to get way better short-term. Then they're going to get worse again. And people are like, I knew it. This is the end. And it's just repeats. But then we zoom out even more and we look at the fourth turning framework. And that's an even more macro framework where things are going to shift to where we're still going to have ebbs and flows. That stochastic nature of, you know, the cyclical nature of the universe and everything in it. But we will transition out of a fourth turning where it's not as radical. It's not as volatile. It's not as polarized. But we're still going to have the spring, the summer, the fall, the winter. That's life. So that's why I love investing, man. It's like the spiritual and the financial. I love that.
Yeah.
So many similarities.
Dude, it's exactly what we started talking about at the beginning of the episode of how the negative polarity thrives on the masses being unaware of the truth and believing in lies. And the negative polarity forces that control the markets and the money system rely on the people not knowing what's really happening in the market and how the market really works so that they can capitalize on the ebbs and flows.
Yep.
So yeah, it's the same principles at work everywhere. It always is.
Simple bait and switch. Distracting you with 25 financial news headlines a day, feeding you at a pace your brain can't compute. You're overwhelmed. There's so many companies. There's so many markets. They're hitting you with the tickers at the bottom. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, this company's down. This is halted. GameStop halted. All this. Like, there's so much that you think that that's investing. You think that that's the game. And in reality, like, that's why I like macro, because I literally don't look at any of that. And I'm like, okay, they're trying to distract me. Where will the world be in 10 years? I'm going to go there right now, and I'll see you guys in 10 years. It's that simple. It's so simple.
Yeah.
You just zoom the fuck out. Turn it all off.
Who knew?
I don't watch a single financial news outlet, yet I'm outperforming hedge funds. How does that happen? It's because they're a product of their own deception, too. They, in a way, they plug into it. It's like they're 100%. Putting it out to manipulate us, but in a way that also ends up like affecting them in a way.
For sure. I mean, you know, on this show, we the whole purpose of this show is to give the enlightened perspectives on the things happening in the world. And the best news to leave you all with as we close this episode and wrap things up is that, as we're seeing here on today's episode, the theme has been that it's always the same playbook. It's just always the same play from the same playbook. And that's the good news for those of us on the light side, striving towards unity consciousness on this planet, is that the negative polarity of separation consciousness only has a couple of plays in their playbook. Really, like if you're going to steal people's free will, there isn't a lot of ways to do that. There's just like a couple of basic negative principles you can use, promise you something good in exchange for control. You know, like problem, reaction, solution. There's those couple of plays, and they use the same plays everywhere. And so once we learn the plays of the negative polarity, which is why we highlight them here so much, to get you, the repetition opens up your awareness a bit of like, oh, it really is always the same thing. Problem, reaction, solution. Look over here. Well, I take this thing over here. It's just, that's it. Everywhere. Markets, like medical system, food system, technology. It's the same plays. And so, you know, here at the Great Awakening Show, we come to bring you the good news that the negative polarity is crumbling and the markets are rising. What more can you ask from us, right?
All right, guys. We hope you appreciated today. Let us know in the comments what your favorite part was, if you have any feedback for us. And as always, thank you so much for sharing this with your loved ones and continuing to support. We'll see you guys in our next episode. Wish you all peace and love.
Peace and love.